The golden silk bug was the king of vermin. It was not afraid of weapons and was the most difficult to get rid of. Moreover, it formed a hybrid with another vermin and had actually given birth to more vermin in Prince Louis's body. It was very difficult to get rid of these small vermin. Although Leylani had learned from the old man's books on how to remove the vermin, she knew that it was not easy and that it would take a long time. At this time, when they heard Leylani's words, which were like the words from an ancient book, everyone was shocked and stared at her in disbelief. She was obviously a good-for-nothing. How could she be so sensible and logical? They had never heard of that so-called hand-decaying powder. That was the name that Leylani made up, so of course, they wouldn't know it. Under everyone's stunned gazes, Leylani took out a medicine bottle from her sleeve and was ready to spread it on Fabian's right hand. At this time, Howard suddenly stepped forward and stared at her with fear. "What kind of powder is this? Will it hurt His Highness? I suspect that you and your fifth sister are the same. You only know how to brag and don't know how to cure diseases. If you dare to deceive His Highness, I won't let you go." "Howard," Fabian shouted coldly. Howard hesitated for a moment before he took a step back unwillingly. He was really worried about the safety of Prince Louis, for fear that he would be hurt again. Seeing that Howard did not believe her and even interfered with her detoxification, Leylani stepped forward and said, "I'll make a bet with you. If I can cure the hand-decaying powder on His Highness, you'll recognize me as your master in the future and listen to my orders. How about that?" Howard was shocked. This girl was too arrogant and she spoke too much. How could he recognize her as his master? He listened to her order. "Not only this cheap hand-decaying powder. If you can cure all the poison in His Highness' body, I will definitely do anything for you. I will follow your orders forever. However, forgive me for not being able to recognize you as my master. I will only recognize one master in my life, and that is His Highness. I will never betray him. If you can't cure him, and you are a quack, I will kill you immediately." Leylani rolled her eyes. This man always wanted to kill people. She would definitely make him regret it. "Well, I agree to the bet. I hope you can keep your word." After saying that, she ignored Howard. With a serious expression on her face, she carefully observed Fabian's hand. She was no longer as calm as before. As she began the treatment, she was full of seriousness and professional caution. She observed Fabian's hand. While exclaiming in her heart that his hand was really beautiful, she looked at Fabian. He sat there firmly like a mountain. His expression was cold, but he was still like a god. Her hand-decaying powder was very powerful. The poisoned person's hand would feel like tens of millions of ants were biting them at the same time, making them feel like they were in hell. Fabian was in so much pain, but he didn't even frown. He was still able to sit there firmly, which showed how much this man could bear. Seeing him like that, she did not delay. She quickly took out the antidote powder and sprinkled it on his hand. At the same time, she took out a universal antidote from another medicine bottle and handed it to Fabian. "Your Highness, this is an omnipotent antidote I developed. If you take it, your hand will recover faster." Fabian looked at the glass bottle suspiciously. Howard was about to step forward to stop him, but he was stopped by Fabian. Fabian seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. Instead, he ingested the medicine. In that instant, he actually discovered that the feeling of the ants biting down on him had lessened. He didn't feel that much pain anymore. Leylani began to massage his hands. Her small white hands gently touched his hands. Her heart suddenly froze, and then it began to race. It was all because this dumbed man was God's favored son, and he was so handsome. As soon as she touched his hand, her heart beat faster, but she did not dare to look into his deep eyes, which were so beautiful that they could shock people, for fear of being sucked into them. Just as Leylani was slowly caressing Fabian's hand, suddenly everyone saw that the black toxin in his hand was slowly fading away. Many parts of his hand had been restored to its original fairness, which was full of healthy luster. Gradually, Fabian found that his hand was neither painful nor numb. With a gentle movement of his hand, he found that it was actually nimble and flexible. It was no longer as stiff as it had been just now. Leylani massaged his hand again, and his hand began to regain its color. After about 15 minutes of massage, the hand-decaying powder on Fabian's hand was all removed, and his beautiful hand was restored. When the crowd saw such a scene, they all widened their eyes in disbelief and were so shocked that their jaws dropped. No way. This young lady has really removed His Highness hand-decaying powder. His Highness' hand is fine again. That's great. What kind of antidote is that? It's amazing. She can detoxify someone with just a touch of her hand. Is she a genius? If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never have believed that the good-for-nothing young lady of the Millington family had such high medical skills. When Madame Patricia heard a few relatives talking about it, she raised her eyes slightly and said, "What kind of medical skills does she know? She has never learned medicine before. She can buy the antidote anywhere. She just happens to have it. She is just lucky." Hearing Madame Patricia's words, Leylani did not get angry. She just let the first madam think that she was lucky. At that time, she would prove her ability with facts to show that she was not a good-for-nothing. Seeing that the poison in His Highness's hands had been cured, Howard was also stunned speechless. He had just made a bet with Leylani, but he didn't expect that while all the doctors couldn't cure the poison, she could easily cure it. Did that mean that His Highness had a chance to detoxify the poison in his body? If she could really get rid of the vermin in His Highness, he was willing to let her order him around. He was absolutely willing to do anything for her. Sebastian stroked his beard and stared at Leylani with doubt and suspicion. Didn't she not understand medical books? Where did she learn the method of detoxification? Was there really a master behind her? She actually showed her amazing talent for detoxification in front of everyone. He suddenly asked Leylani in confusion, "Where did you learn the method of detoxification? How come I don't know that you know how to detoxify poisons? You're just lucky. You can't neutralize His Highness's poison, can you?" Sebastian had to ask that question because he was afraid that the Leylani could not solve the poison of the hand-decaying powder, but not the vermin poison. If she couldn't solve it, she could not force herself to do it. Otherwise, she would end up like Amber. Not only would her life be in danger, but she would also implicate the entire family. Seeing the disbelief in Sebastian's eyes and seeing that he wanted her to admit that she was lucky, Leylani suddenly smiled. "Although I have not learned medical skills, I have gone to listen to your lessons. I will naturally know if I listen a lot." Before Sebastian could answer, Fabian suddenly said coldly, "How dare you! You mean that you only listened to classes before and don't have actual practical experience, so you were practicing with me just now?" As soon as Fabian's cold voice fell, everyone was so scared that they stood up straight and did not dare to even breathe heavily. If Prince Louis got angry, the consequences would be very serious. Nicole stood in the dark, her beautiful eyes staring at Leylani like a snake. Great. If His Highness gets angry, he will definitely punish Leylani. At first, Nicole thought that Leylani was a good-for-nothing who could not detoxify anything at all. However, she did not know how Leylani had cured His Highness's hand. At that time, Nicole was extremely jealous and thought that she would be trampled on by Leylani again. To everyone's surprise, Prince Louis got angry at the sudden turn of events. It seemed that he was going to punish Leylani. Hearing that, Leylani quickly shook her head and waved her hand. "No, I don't. I've done a lot of experiments on myself. Your Highness, you'd better not be too angry. If you're too angry, the poison in your body will increase. Although your poison has been removed, the 2 remaining vermin poisons have not been cured. I saved you, Your Highness, so you don't have to suffer from the pain. If you punish me, I won't be able to cure the 2 kinds of vermin poison." The implication was that she was threatening him. He still had to rely on her to treat him. If he dared to touch her, she wouldn't help him remove the vermin. Fabian took a deep look at Leylani. She was so bold that she dared to threaten him. Thinking of the 2 kinds of vermin in his body, he took a deep breath. As soon as he took a deep breath, his abdomen began to hurt again, as if it had been pricked by needles. At that moment, he looked at Leylani seriously. "How dare you threaten me? Your Highness, you're mistaken. I didn't threaten you, but you don't have much time left. I'm doing my best to protect you. If anything happens to you during this period of time and I can't cure you, I will feel very guilty. Therefore, you should send someone to treat me well and take good care of me. Don't threaten me anymore." Hearing her words, Fabian raised his eyebrows coldly, and his beautiful eyes looked straight at her. He stared at her coldly, and his eyes were unfathomable and bottomless. What a smart girl. She was smart, courageous, brave, and resourceful. He could not help but look at her in a new light. Fabian's eyes flashed with an appreciation that he did not even notice. He asked in a cold voice, "Now you should know how to detoxify me, right?" Leylani was not in a hurry. She looked at Madame Patricia, who was hiding in the corner. How could she not hate her when she saw the first Madame's vicious gaze? Sebastian locked her in the gloomy and dirty dungeon, while Madame Patricia did not allow anyone to give her a sip of water or food for 2 days, hoping to starve her to death. Amber splashed water on her and wished Leylani could freeze to death. Leylani had sworn to take revenge when she was drenched in water. If she came out, how could she not report it? Thinking of all these things, she sneered and looked at Fabian. In an instant, she said with certainty, "Your Highness, this poison can't be cured in a day or two. I still need to be well prepared. However, Your Highness, I have something to tell you. Your poisoned hand was not caused by the vermin, but by someone who maliciously infected you." "What?" Fabian held the blue and white porcelain teacup tightly with his left hand. He just gently held it, but the teacup broke into pieces with a bang. The blue and white porcelain teacup was broken into several pieces, but there was no scar on his hand. "Tell me clearly, who caused my hand to be affected?" As soon as Fabian opened his mouth, the atmosphere in the hall suddenly dropped to the freezing point. Everyone held their breath. No one dared to make a sound. Madame Patricia stared at Leylani with a guilty conscience. Of course, she knew that Prince Louis's hand injury had something to do with Amber. She thought that Leylani would not be so bold as to expose Amber in public, would she? After all, they were a family. In front of outsiders, they had to show that they were united and got along well with each other. However, Madame Patricia didn't know much about Leylani, and she also underestimated her. Leylani looked at Madame Patricia coldly, then said in a deep voice, "Your Highness, your hand was maliciously infected by Amber. She studied poisons by herself yesterday and accidentally got poisoned. She knew that her hand was poisoned, but she still dared to touch your wound and let you be infected, causing your hand to rot. You were in pain for an entire night. Your Highness, if you don't believe me, you can ask someone to bring her up and take a look at her right hand." Fabian stared at Leylani coldly and then ordered Howard, "Come on, bring Amber up." Under Madame Patricia's frightened and resentful eyes, Howard soon asked someone to take Amber in. Amber was so frightened that her face turned pale. Could it be that she accidentally infected Prince Louis with the hand-decaying powder? As soon as she entered the hall, she saw Leylani standing there, looking cold. When Amber saw the cold expression in Leylani's eyes and heard the whispers of the crowd, she immediately understood. "It was you who framed me. No, it was you who drugged me, so that I accidentally infected His Highness. You planned everything in advance, didn't you?" "My father locked me up in the dungeon for 2 days and nights. Madame Patricia didn't give me a sip of water or a bite of food. I was so hungry inside that I had a high fever and couldn't get out. How could I poison you? I don't know fortune-telling, and I didn't know that His Highness would come. It was Nicole who brought me up here to treat His Highness. Everything was caused by you. How could it be that I planned it in advance?" Leylani's words struck Amber speechless. Being locked up in the dungeon? When Fabian heard Leylani's words, he could not help but look at her carefully. Although she was wearing a clean and decent dress, there were some tiny traces of sand and stones on her face and hands. She must have been left in the dungeon. Sebastian actually locked up his daughter in the dungeon and didn't give her food and drink. This guy seemed to be too cruel. Fabian couldn't help but take a few more glances at Leylani when he saw that she was able to stand up straight and calm after suffering so much. At this time, Leylani stepped forward coldly and grabbed Amber's right hand. "Your Highness, please look at her hand. The poisoning symptoms are exactly the same as yours." If it wasn't for the omnipotent antidote that I used, your hand might have become like this. Amber was the one who infected you with the poison." Everyone gasped as they looked at Amber's hand. At this time, her right hand had long turned black, and it was swollen like a black donkey's hoof. The skin on her hand was all turned up, and it looked like it was soon going to rot and fall off, revealing the bloody flesh inside. "Amber, my daughter, where did your hand get poisoned?" Madame Patricia saw it and rushed up. She had only seen her daughter's hand before, and her reaction was the same as Prince Louis's. At that time, Madame Patricia wanted to ask her daughter the reason, but her daughter covered the matter up. She thought that her daughter was playful and accidentally poisoned herself, so she should recover soon. Madame Patricia didn't expect that when she saw Prince Louis's hand, she immediately knew that her daughter's hand injury was not so simple. They must have something to do with each other. Hearing that, her eyes turned red, and she held Amber's hand tightly. Amber shook her head in fear. "I don't know either. I don't know where I got poisoned. When I touched His Highness's wound, my hands were still fine. Could it be that His Highness infected me?" At that point, Amber suddenly didn't dare to say anything more. Leylani snorted in her heart. When Amber touched Fabian's hand, her poison had not yet taken effect, but it had already infected Fabian's wound. Now she even suspected that it was Fabian who had infected her and was talking nonsense. Hearing Amber's words, Fabian grabbed the chair with his left hand. He didn't even know how the poison was transmitted and who infected whom. When Amber checked his wound, there was nothing wrong with her hand, but Leylani testified to the contrary, which made it hard for him to figure out the truth. Seeing that no one was talking, Amber seemed to have found a chance to live. She knelt on the ground with a thud. Enduring the sharp pain in her hands, she pointed at Leylani with resentment and said, "You wrongly accused me. When I came into contact with His Highness, my hands were fine. It was not me who infected His Highness. Your Highness, she wronged me in public. Please punish this good-for-nothing who wronged me. I can cure your hands, I promise." Amber only heard the discussion of the hand-decaying powder. She didn't know that Leylani had already cured Fabian's hand. She thought that Leylani was the good-for-nothing who made a scene in the hall. Fabian rolled up his sleeves coldly, revealing his snow-white hand. He did not speak, but Amber was stunned. "Your Highness, how is your hand cured? Who cured your hand? Where did you find a famous doctor? Can they cure me too? I have a heart-wrenching pain at the moment. I also want my hand to be cured." After that, Amber quickly stepped forward and kowtowed to Fabian with great sincerity. She pinned all her hopes on him. Unexpectedly, Fabian looked at her coldly. "It's useless for you to beg me. You have to beg her." After that, Fabian's deep eyes swept over Leylani, and there seemed to be a bright light flashing in his eyes. The side of his face was illuminated by the sunlight, making him look like a god. It made people admire his beauty, but they did not dare to look straight at him. Amber saw that Fabian was looking at Leylani, and she stood up in disbelief. No, how could she detoxify? "Your Highness, you are mistaken, aren't you?" Howard stepped forward coldly and said, "His Highness has never misjudged anyone. It's just that Leylani cured His Highness' hand. There are so many people watching. If you maliciously spread the poison to His Highness, I advise you to be honest and confess. Don't force me to make a move. No, it's not my poison. I really don't know anything." Amber shook her head firmly. She didn't know what kind of hand-decaying powder it was. She had never made that kind of poison. It must be Leylani who framed her. Suddenly, as if she had thought of something, Amber gritted her teeth and stared at Leylani. "It was you who poisoned me. It must be that I accidentally infected His Highness. Otherwise, how could you have the antidote?" "Didn't you just say that His Highness was the one who infected you? Why did you suddenly change your mind? If I had the antidote, does it mean that I was the one who poisoned him? Then wouldn't I dare not save others in the future? If I managed to save them, and they said that it was my fault, would I still dare to practice medicine?" After saying that, Leylani said coldly, "I have an omnipotent antidote that can cure most poisons. It's not strange to be able to solve this problem of the hand-decaying powder. I can also use it for other poisons such as itching powder." "I don't believe it. You are obviously a good-for-nothing. You haven't even read a book, much less a medical book. How can you detoxify poisons? There must be something wrong. There must be a mastermind behind you." Amber angrily accused Leylani, but Fabian sharply narrowed his eyes. He never paid attention to the news of the affairs in the Jomari kingdom, but he also heard from the princes that the former crown princess was a cowardly and timid good-for-nothing. They all said that. Looking at Leylani standing in front of him, she seemed to be different from the rumors. How big of a difference could there be between rumors and reality? Although the girl in front of him was very slender and looked weak, the brilliance and temperament in her eyes were unparalleled. From their conversation, he could vaguely hear that they were both daughters of the Millington family, but Leylani had never learned medical skills or read books since she was a child. It was obvious that Sebastian was partial. No one taught her how to become so smart. Fabian's dark eyes narrowed coldly, and there was a trace of suspicion in them. Seeing that Amber was arguing, Leylani snorted coldly. "Can't a good-for-nothing learn by herself? It seems that the geniuses taught by some famous teachers are not as good as me, a good-for-nothing. My medical skills are not good enough, and if I can't cure His Highness poison, I will be slandered. I am narrow-minded and have no demeanor and bearing of a genius." The reason why Leylani explained it in this way was because she saw the obvious suspicion in Fabian's fierce eyes. She was a good-for-nothing. If she suddenly became able to cure any disease one day, she would definitely be suspected. Moreover, she was victimized for being talented. If she let others know that she knew medical skills before she could protect herself, she would definitely be used by others. When Amber saw that she had been mocked as a genius, her face flushed red. When she was about to refute, the nobleman in the seat already spoke in a cold voice, and his voice was full of anger. "Whether Amber maliciously infected me, or whether Leylani framed her, as long as we investigate, we can find out the truth. Men, go to the place where Amber lives and search for the poison of the hand-decaying powder. After that, come and report it to me as soon as possible." Fabian ordered coldly, looking at the crowd with his golden eyes. As soon as he spoke, he exuded a strong kingly aura, and Amber did not dare to kick up a fuss again. Howard immediately led his men to search Amber's room. At this time, Leylani's heart also felt like it was hanging in the air. She said that Amber had infected Prince Louis. If the people did not find anything in Amber's courtyard, it would show that her words could not be trusted. Prince Louis might not listen to her. If Amber framed her again, the shrewd Prince Louis might even suspect that she had poisoned him and then cured him to gain his trust. However, even if they could not find anything, she was not afraid. She had her reasons. At this time, Leylani saw that Yulia, who had been peeping at her in the distance, suddenly ran away. Leylani didn't know what she was going to do. When the guards went to conduct the search, Madame Patricia gently pushed Sebastian and asked him to speak to Leylani so that she could also help Amber solve the poison in her hands. Sebastian looked at Amber's hand where the skin was beginning to peel off. He let out a heavy sigh and quickly turned to look at Leylani. "Leylani, no matter what, Amber is your sister. Can you help her neutralize the poison in her hand first?" Leylani sneered in her heart. Sebastian, when he had put her in a dark and damp dungeon and let her suffer, why didn't he think that she was just an 18-year-old girl? Amber wanted to kill her, and Madame Patricia wanted to starve her to death. These people all wanted her to die. She was not a saint, and she would never detoxify Amber. Although she hated these people very much in her heart, she still pretended to be innocent in front of Prince Louis. She shook her head regretfully and said, "Father, it's not that I don't want to help my sister, but there is no antidote left in the medicine bottle. I just gave all of them to His Highness. She has plenty of omnipotent antidotes up her sleeve, but she would never admit it. She also didn't believe that they would dare to search her." Hearing that, Sebastian's face was full of regret. Madame Patricia's expression darkened, while Amber opened her mouth in disappointment and pain. She didn't believe it. She didn't believe that Leylani didn't have any antidote left. Fabian narrowed his eyes and stared at Leylani coldly. If he was not mistaken, there were still a lot of powders and antidote pills in the bottle just now. He twitched his lips coldly, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he remained silent. At this time, the guard in charge of the search had returned. After reporting to Howard, he took a pack of things and gave it to him. Howard took the bag into the hall and glared at Amber. His expression was terribly gloomy. Howard took the cloth bag to Fabian and showed it to him respectfully. As soon as the cloth bag was opened, a white medicine bottle rolled out, and a pungent herbal smell came out. "Your Highness, the guards found this under Amber's pillow. I can't tell what kind of medicine it is." Hearing that, Amber's face immediately turned pale. She quickly shook her head and said, "Your Highness, there is nothing under my pillow. Someone must have framed me. Please investigate it carefully." As soon as Leylani smelled the pungent scent, she knew that it was the hand-decaying powder she had developed. Her heart was at ease. Just now, she saw that Yulia ran away before the guards conducted their search, so she must have put that medicine bottle under Amber's pillow. Yulia was such a clever girl. She was so experienced that she knew to put the medicine bottle under Amber's pillow in advance. Thinking of this, Leylani suddenly stepped forward and said, "Your Highness, this powder can't be smelled for a long time, in case the poison enters your body." Hearing that, Howard quickly covered the medicine bottle and wrapped it with a handkerchief. "What is this?" Fabian looked at Leylani coldly and glanced at Amber with disgust. "I don't know," Amber said hurriedly. "It's hand-decaying powder. If you don't believe me, Your Highness, you can catch a wild mouse and scatter the poisonous powder on it. There will be symptoms of the hand-decaying powder on the mouse." Leylani stepped forward in time and said coldly. Fabian ordered Howard in a cold voice, "Get a living creature quickly." After hearing the order, Howard went out and ordered the guards. Prince Louis' guards were very powerful. Soon they caught a fat mouse and put it into a cage. After they brought in the cage, Howard opened the medicine bottle and sprinkled the powder on the mouse. At first, the mouse didn't respond because the poison powder didn't touch any wound on its body, so the poison took effect slowly. Howard immediately took out his sword, poked a small hole in the mouse's belly, and sprinkled the powder on it. At that moment, the flesh and blood on the mouse's belly had begun to turn black, and then slowly rotted. When everyone saw it, their expressions changed dramatically, and they looked at Amber coldly. The reason why Prince Louis's poison reacted slowly and only took effect at night was due to the small amount of poison. Howard increased the amount of powder he poured on the mouse, and the mouse's whole body immediately turned black. The mouse's skin soon peeled off, revealing the rotten flesh inside. Everyone was shocked and disgusted. "Your Highness, the poisoning symptoms of this mouse are exactly the same as that of your hands. I can be sure now that this is the same hand-decaying powder. This was developed by Amber herself. She maliciously spread it to you, then framed Miss Leylani. Your Highness, how should we deal with her?" Because Leylani was the one who had cured Prince Louis' hand, Howard had a good impression of her. However, when it came to Amber, who bragged and who worsened His Highness's illness, Howard was very disgusted and wanted to kill her. After hearing that, Fabian's body suddenly exuded a cold aura. He slapped his hand on the rosewood table, and his whole body was filled with a sharp chill. "How dare you, Amber? How dare you try to assassinate me? Guards, drag her down and deal with her according to martial law. Punish her with death by beheading. Beheading!" When Amber heard that, she almost fainted. Madame Patricia and Nicole's mouths fell open in horror, and cold sweat fell from their bodies. Sebastian also looked at Fabian in shock, and his heart raced. Prince Louis described the spread of poison powder as an assassination. It was indeed reasonable. Even if the matter was reported to the king would listen to him. However, was he going to let his daughter be killed just like that? What would happen after Amber was killed? Would the entire Millington family be implicated? Although he was a general, his military and combat achievements were less than 1/10 of Prince Louis. If Prince Louis really wanted to punish him, he could not say a word. "Your Highness, please spare my life. I know I was wrong. I didn't mean it. I absolutely had no intention of harming you, Your Highness. This is a misunderstanding. How could I dare to assassinate you? Please spare my life." After Amber finished speaking, she knelt down with a plop. Madame Patricia and Nicole also knelt down in a hurry. The two of them were so scared that they were shivering and sweating bullets. "Your Highness, for the sake of Amber's young age, please spare her life. I will teach her well in the future and never let her make any mistakes again." Nicole knelt on the ground with tears in her eyes. She cried bitterly, and her thin body made people's heart ache. She held her slender waist tightly, and her tears welled up in her eyelashes. The moment she cried, the guards in the hall looked at her with distress. How gentle the beauty was, but she had to watch her sister die. Madame Patricia was so frightened that her body went limp and she burst into tears. All of a sudden, she turned around and knelt down in front of Leylani. "Leylani, Amber is just young and immature. You are the hero who saved His Highness. If His Highness can spare her life, I will be grateful to you for the rest of my life." "That's right, Leylani. Amber was just being playful. Please, for the sake of us being a family, plead with His Highness for her sake. You've always been the most kind and magnanimous, haven't you?" Nicole also knelt down and moved towards Leylani. She cried so pitifully, but she was still very beautiful. Leylani looked at the mother and daughter indifferently. They were really good at begging. They even came to beg her. Not to mention that she had nothing to do with Prince Louis. Even if she helped to remove the poison in his body, it did not mean that Prince Louis would listen to what she said. What kind of person was Prince Louis? Why would he not kill Amber just because she pleaded for mercy? She thought, Nicole, oh, Nicole, I didn't expect you and your mother to be like this today. Earlier, Nicole had asked Leylani to come and help with the antidote. Nicole had hoped that she wouldn't be able to cure the prince and end up like Amber. All of them had wanted to harm Leylani, and she would never forgive them. However, Amber couldn't die because it was too easy for her to die. Leylani wanted to keep Amber alive so that she could live a life worse than death. Only by experiencing the hard life Leylani had lived in the past could she vent her anger on Amber. Thinking of this, she sighed and raised her beautiful eyes to Fabian. "Your Highness, Amber is indeed a child who likes to play, but I believe that she will never maliciously poison you. She will not be so stupid to let others catch her. Even if she wants to assassinate you, she will not poison her own hands, which will arouse everyone's suspicion. There's only one reason for her to do this." "What's the reason?" Fabian looked at Leylani with a deep gaze. Leylani was taken aback by the strong gaze and her heart was slightly stunned. "Because she was stupid. She accidentally touched the poison and touched your hand without first washing her own hands, which infected you, Your Highness. She didn't mean to spread the poison to you. Your Highness, if you can forgive her, she should just be punished to be locked up in the dungeon of the general's mansion." Fabian looked at Leylani carefully. If he remembered correctly, Amber and Leylani did not get along. They seemed to be like fire and water. If he killed Amber, shouldn't Leylani be the happiest? Yet she even pleaded for Amber. He wanted to say something, but the corner of his mouth twitched, and he didn't say it for the time being. After thinking for a while, he saw Madame Patricia's pleading eyes. He waved his hand and said, "For the sake of Leylani curing my poison, I can spare Amber's life. However, although the punishment of death can be avoided, she can't escape from punishment. I will punish her to be locked up in the dungeon. She is not allowed to come out for a month." One word from Leylani changed Amber's execution to her punishment of being imprisoned in the dungeon for a month. Everyone was shocked. Prince Louis seemed to be full of majesty, but he was not arbitrary. He listened to Leylani's analysis and forgave Amber. The most important thing was that Leylani was right. Amber was just stupid. She was not an assassin. No assassin would be as stupid as her. If she was a real assassin, the whole Millington mansion would be implicated. What Prince Louis did was to save Sebastian's face. When Sebastian heard that, he immediately cupped his hands to Fabian and said excitedly, "Thank you, Prince Louis, for sparing my daughter's life. I will definitely teach her well in the future." When Amber heard that she wasn't going to die, she immediately patted her chest with her hand. She touched her body and felt her sweat. It turned out that when she heard that she was going to be beheaded, she was so scared that her whole body broke out in cold sweat, which had soaked her clothes. "Thank you, Your Highness, for sparing my life. Thank you, Leylani, for begging for mercy for me." Amber knelt down to Fabian, then turned around and knelt down to Leylani. She bowed deeply on the ground. No one saw that her eyes were full of hatred, and the corners of her mouth were raised coldly and angrily. Amber had never developed any hand-decaying powder. Recently, she was not the only one who was good at making poison in the mansion. There was also Leylani. The powder must have been put on Amber, so she accidentally put it on Prince Louis's body. However, Amber didn't remember when she got close to Leylani. How did Leylani spill poison powder on her? After Amber thanked the prince, Sebastian immediately waved his hand. 2 guards came in and dragged her away. After they left, there was a faint mark on the ground, which was caused by Amber's cold sweat. After getting rid of Amber, Fabian's dark, gold-like eyes swept coldly over Leylani. She was satisfied now, wasn't she? Seeing that Amber had been dealt with, Howard nervously said to her, "Miss Leylani, the poison in His Highness hasn't been removed yet. It's urgent. Can you give him the antidote immediately?" "Your Highness, the poison in the vermin is not simple. It can't be removed in a short time. Although I know how to remove the vermin, the process is extremely complicated and dangerous. To be honest, I have never removed the vermin in the past. I can't guarantee that I will succeed. After all, it is related to Your Highness' life, and I don't dare to boast about it. If there is a bad result at that time, Your Highness, if you won't blame me, I will dare to try." After thinking for a while, Leylani said those words. What she knew was also what she had read in the book of the old man of Witch Village. She was not sure whether it was useful or not, so she did not dare to take the risk to agree to the treatment. If something went wrong with her treatment, she would not be able to bear the responsibility. Hearing that, Howard's heart suddenly became cold. He originally thought that if Leylani could cure the poison in His Highness' hands, it could solve the poison in his body too. Now, it seemed like he overestimated Leylani too much and was too optimistic. Hearing what she said, Howard immediately looked at Fabian nervously and said, "Your Highness, she can't guarantee that she will succeed. She didn't even get rid of the vermin. Can we trust her?" When Fabian heard that, there was no expression on his face. His expression was as cold as ice. After thinking for a while, he narrowed his beautiful eyes slightly and said, "Well, I promise you that I will let you have a try. If there is any problem at that time, I will bear the responsibility. I won't blame you." "Your Highness, you can't do this." Howard looked at Fabian worriedly. "Howard, don't say anything more. I've made up my mind. Since all the famous doctors in the world couldn't do anything about it, why not let this strange girl have a try?" Seeing that His Highness had made up his mind, Howard had to step aside and stop talking. "What ingredients do you need? You can ask Howard for help. He will do his best to help you." Fabian looked at Leylani expressionlessly and spoke coldly. Leylani rolled her eyes, raised her eyebrows, and said, "Your Highness, I just cured your hand and didn't charge you any treatment fee." Fabian's fierce eyes narrowed immediately. He looked at Leylani coldly, and there was a sense of disgust in his eyes. This woman was not an ordinary woman who loved money. Howard. Although Fabian felt that Leylani's behavior was too greedy, he also felt that she deserved it. However, she was also too impatient. Howard understood what Fabian meant and glanced at Leylani with disgust. He took out a bag of money from his pocket and handed it to her. "Here are 500 taels of silver. Take it first. You'll be rewarded for curing His Highness later. According to the market price of my treatment, I can only charge 100 taels of silver to cure His Highness. With the more than 400 taels of silver, I will use it to buy the necessary medicinal herbs for His Highness to remove the vermin, as well as the cost of making a scalpel. Your Highness, you must think that I am greedy for money at this time, but I have no choice. I only receive 2 taels of silver a month, and it's often taken away by the servants. I also want to be a benevolent doctor who doesn't charge for the treatment fee, but I'm too poor. I don't even have the money to buy bread, so I dare to ask you for the treatment fee. Your Highness, please rest assured that I will only take the money I deserve. I won't take any more than that." After listening to Leylani's words, Sebastian flushed red, and the displeasure on Fabian's face gradually disappeared. He re-examined Leylani and looked at her with interest. with his fingers tapping the arm of the chair. Leylani also thought that although she seemed a little impatient and anxious to ask for money, it was necessary. No one in this world was willing to do anything for other people's interests if they weren't paid for it. If she removed the vermin for Fabian, she would have to take the risk that he might be killed. 500 taels of silver was nothing to him. At this time, Fabian's arrogant voice sounded coldly. "You can treat me as you like. If you can cure me, you will benefit a lot." "You'll benefit a lot?" Could it be that as long as Leylani cured Prince Louis, she would be rewarded with a lot of gold and silver? Seeing that her eyes were shining, Fabian's eyes darkened unhappily. She was really someone who loved money. "Your Highness, anyway, I still need some time to find the materials to remove the vermin. Why don't you go back to your mansion first and wait for me to find all the materials to remove the vermin for you in person?" Thinking of this, Leylani had to find some essential materials and a few scalpels. Moreover, she had to go to the dungeon to observe Amber and teach her a lesson. At first, she wanted Prince Louis to kill Amber. However, when Leylani thought about it later, what would people in the general's mansion think of her? After all, Amber was beheaded by Prince Louis because she had a dispute with Leylani. She wanted to stay in the Millington mansion for a long time. She couldn't let anyone hate her, so she had to keep Amber alive and play with her slowly. When Fabian heard that, he rolled his beautiful eyes and he nodded his chin lightly. "I will send Howard to help you. During the process of removing the vermin, you can find him if you need anything. If you need money, just tell him directly. Also, how many days will you need to prepare?" Fabian directly mentioned money, which made Leylani's little face turn red in an instant. It seemed that he really regarded her as a money lover. As for how many days it would take to prepare, she thought for a moment, then answered, 3 days. I'll come in 3 days. That's too long. I'll only give you 1 day. Fabian touched his abdomen gently. His abdomen began to ache again, as if the golden silk bug had woken up and began to flip in his stomach again. Seeing Fabian clutching his abdomen and furrowing his brows, Leylani quickly recalled a method to remove the vermin that she had seen before. After thinking for a while, she raised her beautiful eyes and said, "Your Highness, I have a way to temporarily stop your abdominal pain. Every time the vermin poison flares up and causes you pain, eat a boiled egg. That's because the golden silk bug and the cavy bug like egg yolks the most. After you eat the egg, they'll eat the egg yolk in your stomach. When they're full, they naturally won't want to bite you for the time being. This can only stop the pain temporarily, but it can't remove the vermin. Is it that simple? Just a boiled egg can relieve the pain?" Howard looked suspicious. They had never heard of such a treatment before. Other doctors usually wrote traditional herbal prescriptions for His Highness to take or applied herbal medicines to the wound in an attempt to draw out the vermin poison. Leylani actually asked His Highness to eat boiled eggs to relieve the pain. What a strange treatment. In fact, Leylani was not sure that this method would work, but at that time she saw with her own eyes that the old man gave a boiled egg to someone who was poisoned by the vermin. After the old man gave the person the boiled eggs, the person's stomach was no longer in pain. The old man also used raw eggs to aid in the process. He took a needle and inserted it into the raw egg. He rolled it several times over the person while chanting some incantations, and then he cooked the egg. Looking at the shape of the egg from above, if the vermin was a snake, the egg would be shaped like a snake. Through observing the shape of the eggs, one was able to judge the patient's situation. The first thing to do in the pot was to use the egg to solve the problem. The vermin wanted to eat the blood of its owner, and eggs had an eggy smell. Vermin loved the smell of eggs the most, so they could be used in place of human blood to nourish the vermin. A witch who didn't know how to use vermin in the village was called a green witch, while the one who knew how to use vermin was called a black witch. Even green witches were afraid of the old man. The old man's vermin techniques were very powerful, and he always helped the villagers remove vermin. Leylani had seen the old man's treatment of others several times, so she dared to agree to treat Prince Louis. The kitchen of the general's mansion was usually filled with boiled eggs. Soon, a servant brought over a plate of eggs. He peeled an egg in front of Fabian and handed it to him. Fabian's expression was cold. He looked at the boiled egg suspiciously, and Leylani was somewhat anxious. It was easy for her to cure common poisons, but this mysterious vermin poison was not something she was very familiar with. There was no other way. Although the situation was hopeless, she would try her best to save him. Although Fabian was very unhappy, he still picked up the egg and began to eat slowly. He ate very elegantly and slowly. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a man who had been brought up well. When he ate the egg, he felt that the pain in his abdomen was slowly reduced. Earlier, it felt like the pain of tens of thousands of ants biting, but now it was like hundreds of ants scratching his stomach. Although it was still itchy and painful, it was much more comfortable than it was previously. As the pain subsided, Fabian's knitted brows relaxed. He no longer clenched his teeth and endured the pain. "Your Highness, how do you feel? Is your abdominal pain relieved?" Howard looked at Fabian with concern. At this time, Fabian's eyes were as beautiful as cherry blossoms in March. He gently raised his eyebrows. His black hair was like silk. Because of the vermin, his face was very pale, but it made his lips look as red as blood, with a bloodthirsty and cruel beauty. He looked at Leylani with dark eyes, and there was a trace of appreciation in them that even he did not notice. "My abdominal pain is much better than before. It's not comparable to what it was before." Leylani was instantly delighted. It turned out that the boiled egg remedy was really useful. That might be a solution developed by later generations. It was not available on that barren and non-existent continent yet. "Congratulations, Your Highness. If the vermin poison takes effect again after you go back, you can use this method to relieve the pain for the time being. Your Highness, please rest assured that I will prepare all the materials to remove the vermin as soon as possible." Fabian left with his guards. When he left, he sat in the big sedan chair of Prince Louis' mansion. Before he got on the sedan chair, the men, women, children, and maids in the mansion secretly climbed up the gate and watched. All of them wanted to see the real face of Prince. Unfortunately, no one could look at the real face of Prince Louis at will. They could only see the tall, slender, and domineering back of Prince Louis. Just looking at his back and his black hair, it made the girls feel fascinated. Such a back was so beautiful, so his front profile must be even more beautiful. Looking at Prince Louis's back as he walked away, Nicole looked at Leylani silently. She had underestimated this woman too much in the past. Nicole didn't expect Leylani to be able to detoxify and remove the vermin. Prince Louis didn't even spare Nicole a glance, but he listened to Leylani and forgave Amber, which made Nicole feel very unwilling. She was not convinced. How could she, the most beautiful woman in the world, lose to Leylani? It was not a big deal to lose in front of the seventh prince, but she was unwilling to lose in front of Prince Louis. No matter how stupid Amber was, she would not poison herself. The poison on her hands must have something to do with Leylani. She was the culprit, but she ended up being the person who had gotten rid of the prince's poison. Nicole just didn't expect that Leylani would become so powerful. When did she poison Amber? Madame Patricia saw that Nicole was staring at Leylani with hatred, so she quickly held her hand tightly. "You must endure it. Bear it." Amber was stupid, so she fell into Leylani's trap. "Don't go up and seek trouble at this time." "Mother, I can't accept this. She's obviously a good-for-nothing. Why is she better than me in every aspect?" Nicole stomped her feet in anger, and her beautiful little face furrowed. Madame Patricia looked at the front coldly. "We can only endure it, even if we don't want to. There is a master behind her. Before we are sure that we can take her down, we have to endure for the time being. When I think of a way, it will be her time to die." "Mother, if she can cure Prince Louis, won't it be possible for her to make a name for herself? Then I'll be even worse than her. What should I do?" Nicole would never tolerate a good-for-nothing surpassing her everywhere. Nicole would definitely not let Leylani marry a better man than her. She used to think that she could marry the crown prince, and that Leylani could only marry a frivolous duke as a concubine. However, now, it seemed that Leylani's prospects were getting better and better, and it seemed that she could do well for herself. In a competition between women, in addition to appearance, family background, and talent. The most important thing was who would marry a better husband. The one who would marry a better husband would be the final winner. Madame Patricia dragged Nicole to Frost Garden. Even the famous doctors in the world can't cure Prince Louis' poison. I don't believe a girl like Leylani can cure him. Just wait and see. If the poison can't be cured, she will suffer a worse death. Yes, the higher you fly, the harder you fall. Nicole gritted her teeth in agreement. No, she will fall into the mire before she can even take off. Madame Patricia showed a cold expression on her face. Mother, if she can't cure His Highness' poison, she will die without a burial place. Do you think we should do something to her? Nicole was blinded by jealousy and hatred, and her face became very distorted. Hearing that, Madame Patricia immediately glared at her sternly. Don't do that. Do you want all of us in the Millington mansion to die? It's her business that she can't cure him. If you intervene, we will all be implicated by you if we are found out. Nicole snorted reluctantly. I was just saying it casually. I won't really do anything. Prince Louis is such an important person. Nothing can happen to him. You can't just say that. If anyone hears it, we won't be able to live anymore. Just wait patiently. After the vermin is removed, I have a lot of ways to deal with that little bitch. Remember, don't act rashly now. Madame Patricia warned Nicole coldly. Seeing that many people had left, Sebastian walked to Leylani with a puzzled look, and his face was full of disbelief. Can you really remove His Highness's vermin? You're not just deliberately fighting with Amber? I know what you're capable of. If you can't remove the vermin, how can I explain it to Prince Louis and His Majesty? Leylani blinked her big black eyes, which were full of sarcasm. In your heart, am I really that incompetent? It's not that you are afraid of not being able to provide an explanation, but you are afraid that I will ruin your future. Don't worry, I will bear all the consequences, and I will never implicate you. Are you angry with me? You're so angry because I locked you up in the dungeon. In order not to be locked up, you promised to treat His Highness. You are taking revenge on me. You want to take revenge on the whole Millington family. You are so cruel. Sebastian was so angry that he pointed at Leylani and his whole body trembled. Leylani sneered at him and suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. Her heart was filled with desolation. This was her father. He never believed her and would only despise her. Whatever you think is your own business, forgive me for not accompanying you. After saying that, Leylani walked in the direction of Moonhouse. Sebastian trembled on the spot. Suddenly, he waved his big hand and swept the teacup on the table to the ground. All of you make me worry. What did I do in my life to give birth to such an unfilial daughter? When Leylani returned to Moonhouse, she noticed that Howard had been following her closely. She curled her lips helplessly and said, Mr. Nelson, I have been locked up in the dungeon for 2 days. I am in urgent need of food to replenish my strength and rest. Can you go to my father's courtyard to have a rest and give me some privacy? Leylani really didn't like to be followed by others. No matter how cool and handsome Howard was, she was not interested in him. Howard was stunned for a moment before he said coldly, You shoulder the responsibility of saving the common people, and I have the right to supervise your preparations. Saving the common people? Leylani narrowed her eyes. She did not have such great ambition. She just wanted to live well. Howard nodded, and his eyes showed his deep admiration for Fabian. Prince Louis's life is related to the lives of all the people in the world. If something happens to him, the Jomari kingdom will not be as peaceful as it is now. At that time, your small world will not be so peaceful. His Highness followed the army to fight on the battlefield when he was only 8 years old. He had been observing and learning how to defeat the enemies. At the age of 15, he led the troops in a small battle, winning a great victory. At the age of 18, he led the troops to charge forward and became the top-ranking troop. At the same time, he studied all the military methods more thoroughly. By last year, he had already made great achievements. Before he set off on the expedition, at a young age, he gave many ideas to lure the enemy for the generals at that time, and he won almost every battle. It was because of him that the borders of our Jomari kingdom are very stable and there's no turmoil. During those years when he didn't go on an expedition with the army, the people at the border of our Jomari kingdom were displaced, and countless people were killed or injured in every battle. Almost no one beat the Bidi tribe, who forced everyone to retreat one after another. The internal and external troubles were very serious. The country was in turmoil, and war was raging. Countless soldiers were injured and killed, and there was starvation everywhere. Your peaceful life today was fought for by His Highness and his soldiers. He is the hero who protected the country, so you must protect everyone's hero. She must protect everyone's hero. Hearing that, Leylani felt that she bore some responsibility on her shoulder. It was as if she could not cure Fabian, the Jomari kingdom would lose the hero who was worshipped by everyone. So many people pinned their hopes on Fabian. Presumably, the pressure on him was the greatest. No matter how smart he was, there were times when he would be tired. He was now poisoned. It was obvious that he was in so much pain, but he endured it as if nothing had happened. He had a steel-like will. Such a person was really a hero. No matter what, Leylani felt that she had to get rid of his vermin. Thinking of this, she suddenly had the will to fight. However, before she took action, she had to eat and sleep well. All right, I know you care about His Highness. I promise you solemnly that I will try my best to cure him. However, I'm not a man of steel. If I don't eat and sleep well, how can I carefully remove the vermin for him? Leylani spread out her hands helplessly. These people in ancient times were really loyal to their master. They cared about their master more than their own lives. She appreciated their loyalty. Howard thought for a moment. That was indeed the case. He held the sword in his arms, cupped his hands at Leylani, and then left. After Howard left, Leylani hurriedly asked Yulia to serve her some good food. After having a good meal, she took a bath and then slept comfortably. Leylani slept until it was dark. By the time it was dark, she couldn't fall asleep no matter how hard she tried. She couldn't fall asleep, so she simply got up, put on her clothes, and went out with Yulia. Yulia held a lantern in her hand and followed behind Leylani. When she saw Leylani was walking in the direction of the dungeon, Yulia immediately laughed happily and said, "Miss, Fifth Miss has tortured you so much. Now it's her turn to be locked up in the dungeon. Have you come up with any good ideas to torture her?" After thinking for a while, Leylani said with a smile, "I'm much gentler than she is. We just need to scare her a little. Look, how kind I am. I'm not even going to harm her." Yulia shook her head with a smile. "I don't believe that you will really spare her. She has abused you so much, and she wanted you to die. You must not spare her. When you go to Prince Louis' mansion to detoxify him, I will torture her every day to avenge you." Leylani raised her head and pointed at Yulia's forehead. "You little girl, you are even better than me. However, it's really thanks to you that they were able to find the hand-decaying powder under her pillow today." Yulia raised her eyebrows proudly. "I'm not as good as you, miss. I'm ashamed to be praised by you. At that time, I just took a few bottles of your poison and knew which bottle was the hand-decaying powder, so I ran back to Fifth Miss's room in advance and hid them there." Her maid Annie was also stunned. She thought that I had surrendered to Fifth Miss and didn't guard against me at all. If the master is a fool, so is the maid. Leylani stretched out her hand and hooked Yulia's chin. "You're the smart one. As long as there's a smart master, there's a smart maid." It was late, and it was dark all around. There was only the sound of the wind and insects in the yard. There was a faint moon in the sky, and it appeared hazy as it shone silver light on the ground. When Leylani walked to the door of the dungeon, she saw Amelia sleeping there alone, so she walked over coldly. Upon hearing footsteps, Amelia, who had not slept well, woke up in an instant. As soon as she saw Leylani walking towards her with a sneer, she thought of the 1,000 taels of silver she had lost. "First Miss, what are you doing?" Amelia looked at Leylani hesitantly. Leylani took out 2 taels of silver from her purse and handed them to Amelia. She said coldly, "I'm going to visit Amber." As soon as Amelia saw the money, she immediately smiled brightly and said, "Miss Ma, please come in. Did you bring her dinner this night?" "Yes, it was First Madam's order. I can't do anything about it. I can't disobey First Madam. She gave me some money and asked me to take good care of Fifth Miss." "How much did she give you?" Leylani touched the little purse that Yulia had embroidered for her. "Half a string of copper coins," Amelia whispered. "First Madam is generous. She is really willing to give you half a string of copper coins. How about this? I'll give you 20 taels of silver. Let Amber starve and don't give her water for 3 days. If First Madam gives you food, you can give all of them to the red-eyed boy next door. As long as you do it well, I will give you some benefits." Money could make the world go run. As soon as the 20 taels of silver were taken out, Amelia's eyes immediately lit up. They were the servants of the Millington family. They could only follow the Millington family for the rest of their lives. As long as the Millington family could pay for their food and clothing, there was no need for any more money. However, in order to win the hearts of the people, the Millington family would give the servants dozens of copper coins per month. 1,000 copper coins was equivalent to 1 tael of silver. For that 20 taels of silver, Amelia would have to work hard for 40 years in the Millington mansion. As long as Amber helped Leylani to do something, she would have 20 taels of silver. After it was done, there would be more. Amelia thought for a moment and immediately became excited. "First Miss, don't worry. I will definitely do these things for you. In the future, First Miss, you will be my new master. If there is anything you need, just tell me. I will definitely serve Fifth Miss for you." Amelia spat the word servant. It was only now that she knew that it was possible for her to make a fortune overnight with Leylani. If Amelia followed Madame Patricia, she could only be suppressed forever. However, Amelia narrowed her eyes in confusion. First Miss actually knew that there was a red-eyed monster inside. It didn't matter to Amelia. As long as she had money to earn, there were some things that she could turn a blind eye to. Thinking of the red-eyed boy who gave her a bun, Leylani added, "When I am not in the general's mansion, you must take good care of the red-eyed boy for me, and don't allow anyone to hurt him. If anyone dares to hurt him, you must send someone to tell me." "Yes, First Miss, I accept your order." Amelia didn't know why Leylani cared so much about the red-eyed monster. However, since she had received her money, she would naturally work for her. Amelia was also a person who kept her promise. The reason why she betrayed Madame Patricia was because the latter only treated them as slaves. Other than providing them with food, clothing, housing, and transportation, she looked down on them and never took them seriously. Sometimes people pursued not only money, but also a sense of existence and value. Amelia felt that she had no sense of existence or dignity in Madame Patricia's place. However, Amelia felt that she was valued by Leylani. She suddenly felt that she could follow her because Leylani was much more reliable than Madame Patricia. Just the thought of the 1,000 taels of silver that she had lost last time had made Amelia extremely regretful that she had not listened to Leylani's words at that time. She felt that Leylani was very smart and could predict things like a god. Thus, in the future, Amelia felt that she must get close to her and follow her. After talking to Amelia, Leylani walked into the dungeon with Yulia. After walking into the dungeon, Yulia said with some heartache, "First Miss, you are too generous. You don't have much money. It's not easy to make money, so you should save some. You can't take advantage of these people who change sides depending on how other people treat them. Just because they like to do things according to circumstances, I only gave her 20 taels of silver. Will she really work for me if there are other people like this? Don't worry, you must pay a price to achieve a certain purpose. They are so poor that they don't dare to offend me. In order to get more money, they will work even harder. Besides, this is not a small matter. It's a big matter to be punished by the First Madam. If you don't give her more money, she won't help us. If Madame Patricia found out that Amelia tortured Amber, she would definitely punish her. If Leylani didn't give Amelia some money, she wouldn't do it." "I see. Miss, you are the best." Yulia gave a thumbs up to Leylani. At this time, the two of them had already walked to the door of the dungeon. From a distance, it seemed that there were candles burning in Amber's stone dungeon. When she looked at it again, she saw that Amber was wearing the quilt that Yulia had given her. There was a fire in front of her, and she was holding a skewered chicken wings. She was actually roasting chicken there. There were a lot of fruits and pastries on the ground, as well as a few boxes of clothes and jewelry for Amber. She was sitting in prison so carefreely, as if she had the same freedoms she did outside. Leylani did not receive such treatment when she came in. Seeing this vastly different treatment, Leylani narrowed her eyes coldly. She was very angry, and the consequences would be very serious. Amber was in prison, but it was as if she was traveling elsewhere. How could Leylani let Amber do as she wished? It was then that Leylani also realized that Amber's right hand had recovered. Amber's right hand had turned black and was about to rot, but Leylani didn't expect it to be fine. Her hand was no longer black, nor did it continue to rot. The skin that had been peeled off had already fallen off, but the hand still looked red and ugly. It was full of wrinkles, as ugly as if it had been burned by fire. Madame Patricia must have asked someone to find a way to neutralize the poison in Amber's right hand. Although the poison in her right hand had been removed, it became very ugly. There was no difference between the skinless hands and being disabled. The flesh had already scabbed over, and it looked dark and ugly, causing others to lose their appetite. No noble family would want a daughter-in-law with such an ugly hand, right? After taking a look at Amber, Leylani began to think of a way to deal with her. It was a pity that she didn't know martial arts, didn't have inner energy, and didn't know how to fly over walls. Otherwise, she would have blown out Amber's candles, put out the fire, and then pretended to be a ghost to scare her. On such a dark and gloomy night, it was most interesting to pretend to be a ghost. At that moment, someone behind her suddenly patted her lightly. The strength of the pat was very light, like a ghost caressing a person in the dark night. Leylani was so scared that her blood flowed backward and her face turned pale in an instant. She quickly turned back and saw a pair of cold and confused eyes in the dark night. When Leylani looked at the man again, she found that he was tall and strong with a handsome appearance. He was holding a long sword in his hand. Only then did she relax. It was Howard. He was indeed skilled in martial arts. She didn't even notice that he had quietly followed her. "Miss Leylani, it's so late. Why are you here?" "Shh! Keep your voice down!" Leylani covered Howard's mouth, not letting Amber hear their voices. Howard frowned in confusion. He was afraid that Leylani would run away and refuse to remove the vermin for His Highness. At night, he waited outside her moon house, but he saw her sneaking out. At first, he thought that she was going to run away, so he quickly followed her. When he found that she had come to the dungeon, he knew that she was not going to run away. Just as he was wondering, Leylani suddenly approached him. "Do you know martial arts? Do you know the lightness skill? Do you know how to put out the fire with your palm wind?" Howard was stunned for a moment, and then he nodded. "I am a first-class guard of His Highness. I knew these when I was 5 years old." "Great, Yulia. Go and get a black robe from Amelia." Why was Leylani looking for a black robe? Yulia was a little puzzled, but she still ran off quickly. As soon as she left, Leylani pulled Howard to a tree opposite the cell. She pointed to Amber's burning fire and said, "Can you channel your inner energy to put out her candles and bonfire?" Howard frowned and said, "It's not a problem to extinguish the candles from such a distance, but I'll have to try the fire." After that, he immediately concentrated his energy, mobilized his central abdomen, and gathered his inner energy. With a wave of his hand, a fierce palm wind came out of his hand. Even Leylani could feel the fierce palm wind as it blew. With a swoosh, the 2 big candles in front of Amber were all extinguished. "Wow, so handsome!" Leylani couldn't help giving Howard a thumbs up. Amber saw with her own eyes that the candles were extinguished. She was so frightened that she looked around. "What's going on? Who blew out my candles?" At that moment, Howard once again concentrated and gathered his energy. Then he reached out his hands and moved forward. A gust of wind howled past. In the blink of an eye, the gust of wind swept up the sand and stones on the ground and slammed into the cell door. As soon as the sand, stones, and soil hit the fire, more than half of the fire was put out. Only a few small flames were left dancing. Who is playing with me outside?" Seeing that the fire was about to be put out, Amber was so scared that she stood up straight and trembled all over. At this time, Amber's heart was already racing. She even trembled when she spoke. She quickly picked up a piece of wood and grabbed it in her hand. She pointed to the door of the cell and shouted, "Who is it? Who's trying to scare me outside? If I catch you, I'll skin you alive." "She scolded you." Leylani reached out and poked Howard's clothes. "Is she scolding me?" Howard frowned unhappily. He was there to help, but was scolded instead. However, he would not let go of anyone who dared to curse someone. His gaze was cold and he frowned. He stretched out his right hand again and struck out a palm wind. This time, he did not use his palm wind to blow up the sand and stones on the ground, but a bucket of water outside the cell door. With a swoosh, the bucket smashed heavily against the iron fence, and all the water inside splashed on the fire, instantly extinguishing it. This time, everything was silent, and the surrounding area was suddenly plunged into a kind of ice-cold darkness and despair. Amber's fire was put out, and she couldn't see the space in front of her clearly. She was so scared that she leaned against the wall and shouted with cold sweat all over her head, "Are you a human or a ghost? Come out and fight with me if you have the guts. I am waiting for you here. If you have the guts, come up. Don't hide in the dark and play tricks." As soon as Amber finished speaking, a pile of dog poo flew towards her face, which made her face dirty and smelly. Bah! Amber didn't expect that there would be dog poo flying around in the dark. It was amazing. Where did the dog poo come from? She was helpless and so angry that she wanted to curse. She quickly squatted down and wiped her mouth with clothes and water. Her unfortunate appearance made Leylani want to laugh. Leylani patted Howard on the shoulder and gave him a thumbs up. "You're so powerful." Howard frowned and didn't say anything. At that moment, Yulia quietly ran over, holding a black robe in her hand. "Miss, this was given to me by Amelia. This is the smock she wears to clean the dungeon." Leylani took the robe and threw it to Howard. "Can you help me with something else? Put on this robe and float around like a ghost outside. You'd better act more real and pretend to be a ghost so that you'll scare Amber to death." Howard frowned helplessly, and he didn't know what to say. The corners of his mouth twitched silently. Seeing that Howard was a little reluctant, Leylani quickly said, "Amber always bullies me. I'm upset. If I'm unhappy, I can't remove the vermin sincerely. If I can't solve the vermin, His Highness." "I'll wear it!" Before Leylani could finish her words, Howard grabbed the robe and put it on. Then, he listened to Leylani's request to untie his dark hair and covered his face with it. "You must cure His Highness." After he finished speaking in a cold voice, Howard rushed forward and flew into the air. As soon as he flew up, it startled Leylani and Yulia, because he looked really like a ghost at that moment. It took Amber a lot of effort to get rid of the dog poo on her face. She stomped her feet in disgust and was about to get angry. Suddenly, a long black shadow flashed in front of her among the trees in the distance. A black shadow. The black shadow's clothes were wide and long. The black shadow gloated slowly. Its black hair was in front of it, covering its whole face. Its eyes were dull and empty, and it floated in the air like someone who had been hanged to death. Amber was so scared that she screamed, "Ghost! Help! There's a ghost here!" No one responded to her. At this time, the ghost was still floating slowly, with a very unpleasant sneer. It even made a very ugly laughing sound, like a child screaming, crying, and howling. Finally, it stopped on a treetop. It floated there like a ghost hanging on a tree. "Dumn it! Ah, help! Someone come! There's a ghost here!" At this point, Amber could no longer remain calm. Her body started to tremble violently, and she shivered uncontrollably. At this time, the ghost was coldly hanging on a tree. It seemed to spit out a long, bright red tongue at her. It also opened its big bell-like eyes wide and looked at her coldly, which terrified her. The ghost swayed gently with the wind, without any vitality. It stuck its tongue down desperately, staring at her with hatred on the tree like a wronged ghost. At this time, the wind blew, whistling like a demon wind. It was gloomy and dark everywhere. Amber was so scared that she squatted against the wall, and her knees could not help trembling. Just then, something suddenly passed through the wall and poked her back. As soon as she was poked, Amber screamed, "The ghost is coming! The ghost is coming for me!" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly fell to the ground. Her eyes rolled, and she passed out. Seeing that Amber was so scared that she fainted, Leylani couldn't help rolling her eyes. Amber was really a coward. She couldn't help but be terrified. Seeing that there was no sound in the dungeon, Howard also found that Amber was so scared that she fainted. He jumped down from the tree with the lightness skill, pulled off his robe, and spat out a piece of red silk from his mouth. He looked at Leylani with a faint expression. This was the first time in his life that he had pretended to be a ghost to scare people. As the leader of the Imperial Guards, he always followed His Highness to the forefront of the army. Now that he came to the women's yard to scare them, if his colleagues heard about this, they would definitely laugh at him. Seeing Howard's high-level martial arts, Yulia couldn't help blushing. She clapped her hands at him in admiration and praised, "Mr. Nelson, you're amazing. You're so good at martial arts. You can fly over eaves and run on walls. I admire you." Seeing Yulia's admiring expression, Howard glanced at her coldly and walked out stiffly. His figure looked extremely cold, but the corners of his mouth almost broke into a smile. It was so nice for a man to be worshipped by a woman. He had not trained his martial arts, suffered hardships, or endured how busy his life was in vain. Leylani also stepped forward and patted Howard's back heavily. "You're a good Imperial bodyguard. Can you teach me how to fly over eaves and run over walls when you're free? It's so cool." Ahem, ahem, ahem. Howard's back was slapped hard, and he couldn't help but cough a few times. Leylani looked weak on the outside, but she was so strong. He tilted his face and looked at the bright moon in the sky with admiration and praise. "My lightness skill is nothing compared with His Highness. His Highness's lightness skill is the best in the whole world. Flying over eaves and walking on walls is just a part of his daily life. I once saw him running on the palace wall. Looking from a distance, it seemed like his figure was reflected on the moon. The image was gorgeous, as if he had passed through the moon. So powerful? Then I can ask him to teach me the lightness skill, right?" Upon hearing that, Leylani immediately put her hopes on the most handsome man in the world. After all, if such a handsome man was to teach her the lightness skill, she would be more keen and willing to learn it. It sounded like a great idea. Howard scoffed and said, "His Highness is so cold that he never gets close to women." Fabian wouldn't even bother to look at Leylani, much less teach her. Howard couldn't bear to upset Leylani, so he didn't continue. She immediately understood what he meant. She crossed her arms over her chest with disdain and said, "I'll threaten him with the solution to the vermin. Let's see if he'll teach me or not." You're shameless!" Howard turned around and glared at Leylani with hatred. He was so angry that his fingers began to tremble. He had never seen such a shameless woman who threatened others. How dare she threaten Prince Louis? Humph. She should just make sure she survived. It was midnight, in Prince Louis' mansion. Howard returned to the Divine Firmament House, where Fabian lived in Prince Louis' mansion, and told him everything that had happened that night, including the matter of Leylani asking him to pretend to be a ghost to scare Amber. "She actually asked me to pretend to be a ghost and hang myself on a tree. Amber was so scared that she fainted. Leylani didn't blush, and her heart didn't race. She's not afraid at all. She is not as weak as an ordinary woman. She is strange and is completely different from the timid and weak good-for-nothing that the rumors said she was. She seems to be very interesting, but she also has a cruel heart." Howard braced himself to report these things, and his face was already covered with cold sweat. Howard thought that His Highness would definitely be furious when he heard that Howard helped Leylani do these things. That was because, without His Highness's permission, they could not obey anyone. Howard thought that the prince would be angry, but he saw Fabian walk to the window. Fabian looked at the hazy and gentle moon in the sky, and there was a faint mist in his eyes. Suddenly, a deep and magnetic cello-like voice sounded in the quiet night. "Continue to investigate her. I don't believe that a person can develop so fast. She must have some unknown secrets." A good-for-nothing suddenly changed her character and could detoxify poisons. He had every reason to suspect that she had something to do with the killer organization. First, she poisoned him, and then she would detoxify him. Or perhaps she was afraid that he would not die and would assassinate him when she was in the process of detoxifying him. All these things were possible. Otherwise, how could it be that all the famous doctors in the world couldn't cure the poison, yet she had a way? Generally, only the person who put the poison in the vermin could detoxify it. She claimed that she could do it, which made him suspicious. It was said that the eldest daughter of the Millington family had been hiding away quietly and rarely showed up in front of others. She might have been replaced by the killer organization, or she had been bought over and trained. The fate of the entire Jamari kingdom depended on whether Fabian lived or died, so he had to be careful and cautious. Howard nodded and said, "This time, the Blackened sect sent Ghostina, the 10th-ranked female killer. I heard that the Blackened sect sent more killers than just her. I've been speeding up the investigation, hoping to find out the whereabouts of this Ghostina and the mastermind behind her. If we can find the base of the Blackened sect and its leader, we can kill them all. However, the Blackened sect is extremely secretive. They often move from place to place, and they hide as various legitimate professions or feng shui masters. It's really difficult to find them. I haven't heard of them in the past 20 years, so it may take some time to find them. It's not the most important thing to find the Blackened sect. The most important thing is to find out the real person behind the scenes who spent money on the Blackened sect." Fabian narrowed his eyes coldly and stated, "Yes, Your Highness. I will try my best to catch Ghostina first, and then ask her to provide information on the mastermind." Fabian put his hands behind his back. His golden robe made him look noble. He seemed to suddenly remember something. Then he asked Howard, "Did you find the person I asked you to secretly look for last time?" Howard shook his head and said, "My subordinates went to inquire about it, but they found nothing. No one knows a woman with a plum blossom birthmark on her belly. Moreover, that is a place where ladies from official families often go to have fun. It is crowded there every day. All the young ladies in the capital often go there. If you want to find a girl with no other characteristics other than a birthmark on her abdomen, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack." The questions His Highness asked were too strange, and the person he was looking for was also very strange. Usually, no one would know that there was a birthmark on others' abdomens. Moreover, it was in the shape of a plum blossom. It was impossible for him to ask the girls to lift up their clothes and expose their stomachs so that he could look at them one by one. Otherwise, he would have been beaten to death long ago. Moreover, every time he asked, he would be scolded by the girls for being a hooligan and a pervert, so he didn't dare to ask more. Hearing that, Fabian frowned deeply. His father called him back to the capital this time, so he should soon hold a consort selection banquet for him. He would choose a concubine for him to give birth to his children. In the past, his father had always mentioned it, and Fabian had refused many times. At that time, Fabian refused because he had been fighting outside all year round. He knew that he might die on the battlefield accidentally, so he didn't want to get anyone else involved. The reason why Fabian didn't get close to women was because he thought that women were troublesome and that they were a burden. A woman was already a burden. If he wanted to have children, he would have worries and attachments in his heart. How could he fight on the battlefield with all these distractions? At that time, there would be countless difficulties. In whatever he did, he would become timid and hesitant because of his worries. He would be afraid that his wife and children would have no one to take care of them if something happened to him. Moreover, with a family, his wife and children would become his weak points. They might become hostages for his enemies who wanted to control him. It was really troublesome for him to worry about the safety of his wife and children all the time. Fabian had no intention of getting married, but the situation was different this time. His father had caught a cold before, so his health was not as good as before. If Fabian refused again this time, his father would be very sad, and his mother would always use her poor health as an excuse to put pressure on him. There was a lot of pressure on Fabian. It seemed that it was difficult for him to refuse this time. It was just that. He thought about what happened that day. He looked at the bright moon in the sky with his dark golden eyes, and his dark and thick eyelashes fluttered slightly. There was a faint layer of regret on his beautiful face, which was as beautiful as the spring flowers and autumn moons in the sky. His eyes were full of pity and self-blame. He promised her, Don't worry, I'll be responsible for you. This is my token of love. Just you wait, I will marry you." He had already made a promise to her. What he said was not just empty words. He would do whatever he said. He was Prince Louis of the Jomari kingdom. He would never break his promise, but he could not find her. There were so many people around. Where exactly was she? While Fabian was lost in his thoughts, Howard asked doubtfully, "Your Highness, you have always disliked women. You never allow women to approach you. How could you insist on looking for that woman? You also asked me to give her 10,000 taels of gold as soon as I found her, and then bring her to you. What do you want to do?" Howard grew up in the military camp and had never been in contact with women. He looked confused and was so anxious that he scratched his head. He did not understand why Fabian did this. Howard had never seen Fabian pay so much attention to any woman. In the past, Fabian's mother, consort Roselle, had sent Fabian many concubines. However, he merely rewarded them with a pile of gold and silver and sent them back to the palace. After that, consort Roselle no longer dared to send a woman to him. Howard stayed with Fabian every day. Howard knew every move of Fabian's better than anyone else. When did Fabian get in touch with that woman? However, although Howard kept asking, Fabian never said anything. The latter was really a cool man who valued words as much as gold. Howard thought about it. Could it be that Fabian met the woman last time when he was assassinated by Ghostina? That was because that had been the only day when Howard and Fabian had been apart. On that day, Fabian had been poisoned by Ghostina. She coveted His Highness's peerless appearance, and at the same time, she cast a strong enchantment poison, attempting to kidnap Fabian to take advantage of him. In the end, Ghostina overestimated her poison. She did not expect that even when Fabian was poisoned, he was still the strongest and most domineering man. Ghostina was sent far away by the angry Fabian's palm, and then she fled. At that time, Fabian found out that he was still enchanted by Ghostina's poison. At that time, Fabian was flushed and he disappeared. After half a day, he came back and he was normal again. When Fabian came back, he didn't say a word. Instead, he often looked out of the window in a daze. There was a hint of affection in his eyes, which was a little different from his usually dignified and arrogant man. Could it be that the woman who cured Fabian was the woman with the birthmark of a plum blossom on her abdomen? It must be. That woman must have cured the poison for His Highness. I didn't expect that His Highness couldn't find her. Is she a martial arts master who disappeared after the poison was removed? How can I find her in this way? Howard thought. Seeing that Fabian was in a daze, Howard asked again, "Your Highness, must you find that woman? His Majesty and consort Roselle want to choose a consort for you. If you choose a consort, what position will you arrange for that woman? Will you marry her as a co-consort?" Fabian was in a trance. When he suddenly heard Howard's question, he immediately said coldly, "Who said they are going to choose a consort for me? Besides, you think too much. I don't care about that woman at all. I just owe her a little favor and want to return it to her." After that, Fabian frowned unhappily. Had he been in a daze recently and Howard noticed something? Fabian shook his head coldly. He couldn't think anymore. She was just a woman. If he couldn't find her, he would just forget about her. However, as soon as he thought of him sleeping with her, he felt uneasy, guilty, and full of self-blame. She was also his first woman, so she was of great significance to him. That was why he gave her the ruby ring representing his identity and promised that he would be responsible for her and marry her. Then, for the first time, the vermin started to work. It was so aggressive that he actually fainted for 3 days. 3 days later, consort Roselle ordered Howard to bring Fabian all over the country to find a famous doctor to treat him. During this period of time, Fabian suffered a lot of pain from the vermin poison and had no time to think about the woman. When he was used to that kind of pain, he gritted his teeth and endured it. Then, he quickly ordered Howard to find the woman, but she could not be found. If Howard couldn't find her, she could also take the initiative to come to him. His name was on the ring. Why didn't she bring the ring to him? Didn't she know that it was his? Or perhaps she hated him so much that she didn't want to come. At that time, the situation was urgent. He had been poisoned. If he did not get the antidote immediately, he would die. In order to save himself, he had to do such a thing. His whole body was hot and his mind was unclear. He did not see her face clearly and forgot to ask her for her name. He also forgot to tell her his name, so he now had to look for her like a needle in a haystack. Thinking of this, he clenched his hands tightly, and his expression was extremely cold. Howard thought for a moment and suddenly thought of an idea. "Your Highness, why don't I post a notice and offer a reward of 2,000 taels of silver to look for a woman with a plum blossom birthmark on her abdomen? If anyone knows the woman's whereabouts or clues, you can also reward them with 500 taels of silver." Fabian raised his hand coldly and said, "No. In this way, there will be a lot of people who pretend to be her, which will interfere with your actions. Moreover, if you search for her so publicly, it will cause someone with ulterior motives to try to spy on me. In case someone with ulterior motives finds out that I am poisoned, it will do no good to me. You can continue to look for her in private." The more secretive this kind of thing was, the better it would be. The next day, in Moonhouse, the autumn wind blew, and the leaves of the trees in the general's mansion had begun to turn yellow. Some of them had rolled up and gently fell to the ground. The dead branches and leaves on the ground indicated that autumn was coming to an end and winter was coming. Early in the morning, Leylani walked out of Moonhouse with Yulia. She was going to the streets that day to buy all kinds of herbs to remove the vermin. However, as soon as he reached the gate of the general's mansion, she saw Howard holding a sword in his hand and standing at the gate with his arms crossed. As soon as he saw her coming out, Howard waved his hand to the side. Suddenly, a carriage came over. Howard said to Leylani, "Miss Leylani, do you want to buy herbs on the street today? I'll go with you. Please get in the carriage." Leylani rolled her eyes. Howard was so thoughtful and appeared so early. He must be afraid that she would run away. Really? Was she the kind of person who would run away if she couldn't cure the prince? Of course, if the vermin could not be removed at that time, if Prince Louis wanted to kill her, she would definitely run away. Howard was so attentive that she didn't refuse. She got in the carriage with Yulia. The reason why she could become a medical genius at such a young age in her previous life was because she worked very hard, but it was also because of her photographic memory. She could read 10 lines at a glance since she was a child, and her memory was very good. The medical books she read when she was a child were still fresh in her memory even when she grew up. When she encountered difficult and complicated diseases, her brain would run, quickly mobilize her past memories, and sort out the treatment methods in the books. Although several years had passed, she still clearly remembered the herbs and methods of removing the vermin in the book written by the old Black Witch. Sitting in the carriage, she frowned and carefully recalled the method to remove the golden silk bug and the cavy bug. The vermin was made of the golden silk bug. If she wanted to get rid of it, she had to kill it first. It was written in the book that the solution to the golden silk bug needed 12 common herbs plus 3 rare and important herbs. The 12 herbs could be bought in the pharmacy, but the 3 herbs were not easy to find. The 3 herbs were the fragrance of rest, the dragon fragrance, and the blood begonia. After hearing the name of the 3 herbs, Howard was confused. He frowned and said, "I've never heard of such rare herbs. If the pharmacies don't have it, wouldn't it be difficult to find them? If that was the case, how could His Highness's poison be neutralized?" Fabian had been poisoned for 15 days. According to what Gostina said before she fled, the person who had been poisoned with that vermin could only live for 30 days at most. In this way, Fabian only had 15 days left. He had been suffering for 15 days, and those 15 days had passed in a flash. They had to make full use of the time to make the last move and never give up. "These 3 herbs can't be found in the Jomari kingdom?" Leylani was shocked. At first, she had some confidence in herself. She thought that as long as she found the herbs, she could remove the vermin according to the method in her memory. However, right then, she heard that those 3 precious herbs didn't exist at all. This was going to be tricky. Howard frowned and looked worried. "Maybe I am ignorant, so if you describe to me the appearance of these 3 herbs, I will immediately send people to search the whole city. If there are these three things in the world, I'll find them as soon as possible. She remembered the description of the appearance of these three herbs in the vermin book, so she told Howard, "When we get to the pharmacy, I'll write down the description of the appearance and growth habits of these herbs, and then you can ask someone to find them." Soon, Howard and Leylani arrived at the largest pharmacy in the capital city. According to the memory in her mind, Leylani first wrote down the names of the 12 common herbs. The boss of the pharmacy store went to grab the herbs. She sat down at the table, picked up a brush, and began to write down the characteristics of the three herbs. Fragrance of rest was mainly used to treat evil spirits, and it had been rare since ancient times. Thus, it was normal that the fragrance of rest did not exist in the pharmacy. Leylani remembered the appearance of the fragrance of rest tree. She knew that the reddish-brown resin overflowing from the tree was needed to remove the vermin. That was the fragrance of rest. It has a strange fragrance and a slightly bitter taste. As long as they went to the forest to find it, according to the characteristics she wrote, they might be able to find it. The dragon fragrance was also a kind of resin, which could be used for angina pectoris, detoxification, etc. It was more difficult to find than the fragrance of rest. There was only one in her hometown in the 21st century. Perhaps that tree existed in ancient times, but it had become fewer and fewer in modern times. The most difficult thing to find was the blood begonia. It was said that it was transformed by an abandoned woman. Because the woman was abandoned by a man before she died, she had too much resentment. The tree she turned into would bloom every day, but what bloomed was a blood-like red flower. There seemed to be blood on the red flower, and it was said that it was caused by the woman's tears. Such a blood begonia, with deep resentment, thought that the golden silk bug vermin was transformed by a heartless man, so it liked eating golden silk bugs the most. As long as it was found, the poison of the vermin in Prince Louis could be cured. Leylani felt that the blood begonia was amazing and did not know if there was such a plant in the world. However, it was written in the vermin book. She drew the characteristics of the blood begonia and handed it over to Howard, asking him to send people to look for it. Howard quickly organized his subordinates to find those three rare kinds of herbs. Leylani and Yulia took the 12 ordinary herbs given by the boss of the pharmacy, got in the carriage, and went to the weapon shop to have a scalpel made. Soon they arrived at the largest weapon shop in the Jomari kingdom. The owner of the weapon shop was skilled and knew how to forge many strange-shaped weapons. Leylani took a piece of paper and drew what she needed on it. She drew small scissors, curved nose scissors, tweezers, pliers, and other tools commonly used during surgical procedures. She asked him to make a set for her first according to the pictures. If he did well, he could make 2 more sets according to the mold. Since the scalpel required by Leylani was very delicate, it was too difficult to make it. The boss just said that he wanted to try it first, but whether it could be used or not was another matter. After paying the deposit of 100 taels of silver, Leylani took Yulia to buy gauze, sutures, medicine, and other necessities. After buying them, she put all the things into the wooden medicine box sent by Millington Mansion. Then she got in the carriage with Yulia and went to Prince Louis' mansion. After about 15 minutes, they arrived at Prince Louis' mansion. As soon as they got out of the car, Leylani was stunned by the grandeur of Prince Louis' mansion. The gate of Prince Louis' mansion was like a palace in a TV series. It was too exquisite and luxurious. There were 2 marble lions standing in front of the gate of the mansion. The lions bared their sharp fangs and stood there in a majestic manner, emanating a domineering and fierce momentum. 2 rows of guards with swords stood in front of the gate of Prince Louis' manor. All of them looked resolute and stood straight, adding a heavy sense of awe to Prince Louis' mansion. As soon as Leylani saw the guards' bearing and manner, she couldn't help but think of Fabian, the arrogant and cold man. Looking at the magnificent building like a country girl entering the city, Yulia clicked her tongue in envy. I thought the general's mansion was already majestic enough, but I didn't expect that Prince Louis' mansion is 100 times more domineering. Miss, I heard that the current king favors and trusts Prince Louis very much. He even built a divine firmament house for him to live in the mansion. Rumor has it that the divine firmament house is the residence of the eternal God of the South. The king believes that the eternal God controls all spirits, commands the gods, can call the wind and rain, and use thunder and lightning. He holds a very respected position in the heavenly palace. The place the king bestowed to Prince Louis is also called the Divine Firmament House. He is comparing Prince Louis to the eternal God, as a god who can protect the Jomari kingdom. Moreover, I heard that something strange happened when Prince Louis was born. A group of phoenixes flew over the palace wall. Everyone thought that it was a good omen. At that time, the world was in drought for 3 years. As soon as Prince Louis was born, it actually rained, and the rain lasted for 3 days. The king thought that Prince Louis was a lucky person of the royal family. When he was 12 years old, the king gave him the title of Prince Louis, which showed that Prince Louis is as precious as you. Is he that powerful? After glancing coldly at the domineering gate, Leylani slowly walked towards it. However, as soon as they reached the door, 2 guards suddenly stepped forward and stopped them coldly. They said with a serious and dignified expression, "How dare you? Who are you? How dare you break into Prince Louis' manor? Tell me your name." "We are from the general's mansion." Before Yulia could finish her words, she suddenly heard the sound of a carriage coming from the alley, and it sounded urgent. A luxurious carriage stopped in front of everyone, and several gorgeous beauties walked out. 2 beautiful women who looked like fairies walked in front. One was tall and thin, dressed in white, while the other was petite and delicate. Her pink dress made her look like a doll. Leylani looked at them curiously and felt that the 2 beauties were very familiar. Suddenly, she saw a young girl in purple jumping out of the carriage with aggressive eyes. The girl had a wolf whip tied around her waist. It was Rosie, who wanted to kill Leylani in Layla Garden that day. At that time, Rosie lost the bet and was forced to drink dirty water. Leylani thought that Rosie would be too ashamed to see anyone, and did not dare to go out. Unexpectedly, she dressed up and appeared at the gate of Prince Louis' mansion. At that moment, Leylani remembered that the 2 girls walking in the front were hostage princesses from the White Wolf Kingdom. One of them was Lydia Roselle, who was dressed in white and who was elegant like a fairy. She was the 4th princess of the White Wolf Kingdom. The beautiful girl, who looked like a doll, was Mira Roselle, the 6th princess of the White Wolf Kingdom. They were not born of the same mother, but they had a good relationship. Both of them were the nieces of Fabian's biological mother, Consort Roselle, and they were also Fabian's cousins. With the protection of Consort Roselle, the 2 of them lived a carefree life in the palace, unlike the hostage princesses from other countries. Compared to Nicole, Lydia was a real beauty who would make everyone admire her. She came from a noble family and was a princess. She was extremely beautiful and was well known throughout the country. She was proficient in musical instruments, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, and music. She was a low-key person. She was never proud of her talents, nor did she bully others. She never claimed that she was the most beautiful and talented woman in front of others. She was not as vulgar as Nicole. Leylani couldn't help but look at Lydia again. Lydia's eyes were bright and her teeth were white. Her temperament was refreshing. When she saw Leylani look at her, Lydia instantly returned a friendly and polite smile. That smile was as beautiful as the blooming of tens of thousands of roses, which made everyone present and all the things in the world lose their colors. It was admitted that Lydia was a beauty who was far more beautiful than Nicole. A smile of hers could overthrow a city, and her laughter could overthrow a country. The reason why Lydia was so beautiful had a lot to do with her fair skin. Her skin was as white as snow, and it was so white that it shone. Her eyes were like clear water as she smiled and looked around. She was so elegant that no one dared to disrespect her. Her every move was soul-stirring and attracted everyone's attention. Seeing Lydia's beautiful eyes and smiling face, like a fairy who accidentally fell into the mortal world, Leylani felt ashamed. She couldn't help but take a few more glances at Lydia, because she was so beautiful that even a woman like her wanted to marry her and worship her. Moreover, all the men in the world had been chasing after Lydia for a long time. The men competed with each other in their hearts. Whoever could marry a woman as beautiful as a fairy like Lydia would win. However, it was said that Lydia had fallen in love with someone a long time ago. That person was Fabian, the arrogant Prince Louis, who was the most powerful man in the Jomari kingdom. When the men heard that, their hearts were instantly shattered. If it was another man, they could try their best to compete with him. However, if it was Prince Louis, who was extremely talented and even more beautiful than Lydia, they knew that they would lose without even needing to compete with him. At this time, Mira and Rosie also saw Leylani. Rosie's original expression was quite proud. That was because she could be with the most beautiful hostage princess, and she could also be friends with Mira, who was good at martial arts. Of course, she was very proud and soon forgot about drinking the dirty water that day. However, as soon as Rosie saw Leylani, her indifferent expression suddenly changed, and fury filled her body. What a shame! As soon as Rosie saw Leylani, she thought of the shame of drinking dirty water in front of the crown prince. Thinking of her shame at that time, Rosie couldn't wait to torture and kill Leylani. When Mira saw that Rosie's expression was as ugly as if she had eaten mud, her expression turned cold. That woman is quite pretty. Who is she? Although Leylani was not as beautiful as Lydia, she was also an outstanding beauty among the crowd. However, Lydia's beauty was ostentatious, and it was easy to make people feel a sense of crisis, because she was dazzling and flawless. She could outshine everyone else as soon as she stood there. People would be afraid of her, and most women with husbands would not dare to let their husbands see her. They would be afraid that their husband's heart would be easily taken away by Lydia. Ordinary girls would not dare to stay in the same room as her, for fear that they would be invisible in front of her. Lydia was simply a blow to everyone. Consort Roselle had once said that Lydia's face was her best weapon. As long as she wanted to, she could even become the queen. There was nothing in the world that Lydia couldn't get with her face. She was truly a beautiful woman who could do whatever she wanted. Consort Roselle doted on Lydia, but she was also afraid of her. She did not allow her to meet the king so easily. Consort Roselle was afraid that the king would be seduced by Lydia and she would lose her favor. However, it was different to have Lydia as her daughter-in-law. Consort Roselle thought that only a woman like Lydia was worthy of Prince Louis, but she couldn't find a daughter-in-law who was more beautiful and satisfying than Lydia, so she chose her to be Prince Louis' future consort. Consort Roselle naturally treated her daughter-in-law very kindly and doted on her. The beauty of the girl in front of them was different from Lydia's beauty. Her cold expression would scare away many people, making her seem less flamboyant. Her beauty was not difficult for others to feel a sense of crisis. It would not make people feel that she would take away everyone's brilliance wherever she was. Sure enough, women with shortcomings made people feel more at ease. However, it seemed that Rosie hated that woman very much. Suddenly, Mira also became hostile to the woman. Rosie looked at her fiercely and said to Mira, "Who else could it be? It's the weak and useless person in the general's mansion, Leylani Millington." Mira thought for a moment and had an impression of Leylani. In the past, Rosie seemed to like to play with that trash. However, they were not familiar with Leylani, and they paid attention to her only because she was engaged to the crown prince. If it hadn't been for the crown prince, everyone would have regarded her as if she was dust. Mira had almost never played with her. As a princess, how could she play with such a person? At this time, Rosie had already walked towards Leylani. When she saw that Leylani was about to enter Prince Louis' mansion, she immediately snorted with disdain. "Leylani, why didn't you hide at home to embroider? Why did you come to Prince Louis' mansion? Are you unwilling to be abandoned by the crown prince and want to find a better backer?" Although Leylani never took the initiative to make trouble, she was never afraid of trouble. As soon as she heard Rosie making fun of her, there was a flash of contempt in her eyes. "Miss Lindsay, you drank dirty water in front of the crown prince last time. You didn't hide at home to reflect on yourself, but you still have the nerve to come out and show off outside? You, believe it or not, I'll beat you to death if you mention it again." Rosie was most afraid that someone else would mention that matter, but Leylani's words were full of sarcasm. Rosie seemed to think that Lydia and the guards were making fun of her, and she was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Leylani rolled her eyes speechlessly and looked at the faint white clouds in the sky. "I just mentioned it. If you have the guts, come and hit me. Dirty water, dirty water, dirty water." She was not afraid that Rosie would dare to be arrogant in front of Prince Louis Manor. When Rosie made a move, she would immediately fall to the ground. She wanted to see if those fierce guards would teach Rosie a lesson or not. Sure enough, Rosie was irritated by Leylani. She raised her whip and was about to hit Leylani. At this time, a slender hand stopped her. The owner of the hand spoke in a voice as pleasant as silk. "Miss Lindsay, this is Prince Louis Manor. Don't get angry." After that, Lydia looked at Leylani apologetically. "Miss Leylani, don't be angry. Rosie is frank and articulate. I hope you can forgive her." Leylani glanced at Lydia. She was quite reasonable, unlike Rosie, who was arrogant and domineering. Suddenly, she had a better impression of Lydia. After hearing Lydia's words, Rosie quickly put away the wolf whip. She almost forgot that that was Prince Louis' mansion, not some random place. No one dared to use weapons and fight there. If Lydia hadn't stopped Rosie in time, the latter would have been in big trouble. Rosie quickly tugged at Lydia's sleeve and said, "Thank you, Princess Lydia. It's just that Leylani has a sharper tongue than me. I just can't bear to see her look so supercilious. She doesn't even care about you and Princess Mira." Rosie tried to sow discord, but Lydia didn't listen to her. "I don't think so. I don't think Miss Leylani is such a person. I admire her a lot." However, Mira was successfully provoked. After all, Rosie had brought her to the capital city for a few years, and they were good friends. There was naturally a different kind of friendship between them. She pursed her red lips unhappily and said, "Lydia, I don't think Leylani's that good. You've misjudged her this time. However, we're people of high status, so there's no need to lower ourselves to her level. Rosie, we came here with a purpose. Don't waste too much time on her at the gate. Hurry up and bring the gifts in." They had come out of the palace under the order of Consort Roselle to see Prince Louis. Even if the matter of being poisoned by Prince Louis was extremely confidential, there were rumors about it. They had many spies in the palace, so it was not difficult for them to find out about it. Consort Roselle regarded Lydia and Mira as her confidants, so she naturally told them about the matter. She asked them to visit more famous doctors for Fabian, and also asked them to bring all the rare herbs she found in the palace to him. That was the purpose of their visit. Rosie's father was the Minister of Justice, so she often spent time in the palace and had a good relationship with Mira. She also knew about the matter. She said that she wanted to take the opportunity to see the handsome Prince Louis, so Mira brought her there. Seeing that Mira was urging her, Rosie was afraid that she would miss something important, so she hurried to Prince Louis' mansion. However, in the process of leaving, she suddenly turned back and sneered. "Leylani, you have been wandering at the gate of Prince Louis' mansion. Do you want to go in? Look at your identity. Will someone like you be let in? Look at Princess Lydia and Princess Mira. As soon as they stand here, the guards will open the door without saying a word. You are not in their league at all." Leylani touched her forehead helplessly. It was said that one's dressing was very important. If she had known this, she would have bought a good dress to wear so as not to be looked down upon by these dogs when she was wearing her mother's old clothes. At this time, Rosie looked at Leylani proudly, and she was very happy. "Keep laughing at me and mocking me. I don't care about it at all," thought Leylani. Leylani was there to remove the vermin and save Fabian. As a doctor whose job was to save lives, she was stopped outside by the guards. She was deemed not as important as Rosie, and it was too embarrassing. Just when Rosie was about to enter the door proudly, a respectful voice suddenly sounded from outside. "Miss Leylani, how long have you been here? Why haven't you entered yet?" It was Howard's voice. As soon as Howard spoke, the three women and their maids all turned their heads and stared at him in confusion. How could Howard speak to Leylani with great respect? At this time, Howard had already walked over to Leylani. She looked at the two guards and said coldly, "I also want to go in, but these guards stopped me." They won't let me in." Hearing that, Howard looked at the two guards coldly. He was full of anger and scolded them. "How do you do things? Miss Leylani is His Highness's honored guest. How can you neglect her like this? You two go and get punished with 20 lashes." Alas! Leylani reached out to stop him, but the two guards had already left to be punished. Leylani opened her mouth and stood where she was. She didn't want Howard to punish them. They were just doing their job. Now they were being punished because they didn't know her, which made her feel sorry. She thought that the rules of Prince Louis' mansion were really strict. After she entered, she could not make any mistakes. Otherwise, she would end up like the two guards. After scolding the guards, Howard quickly led the way for her. "Miss Leylani, don't be angry. Please come with me. I'll take you to see His Highness." When leading Leylani in through the gate, Howard also saw Lydia and the others. He greeted them lightly, and then led Leylani straight to the Divine Firmament house, where Fabian lived. Seeing such a scene, Rosie and Mira were so shocked that their jaws dropped. It was amazing that Howard treated Leylani as a guest and came to welcome her in person. She was just a good-for-nothing. Could it be that Howard was possessed? What's going on? Why does Howard respect Leylani so much? He didn't even look at us, but treated her so well. It's so strange. Rosie felt as if someone had stabbed her in the heart, making her feel very uncomfortable. Lydia glanced at the two of them and could not help but smile. "Look, Miss Leylani is indeed not an ordinary person. My judgment isn't bad, right? Lydia, you have good judgment. Don't you think it's strange? Howard took Leylani directly to Prince Louis' place. Does she have something to do with him? Could she be Prince Louis' lover who can make Howard, a usually cold guard, so respectful?" Mira's unintentional words caused Lydia's body to stiffen slightly. A trace of worry appeared in her beautiful eyes. After a long while, a beautiful smile appeared on Lydia's face. "If it's true, I'll be happy for Miss Leylani. She's lucky." "Only you, Lydia, can be so kind. You can be so generous even when your lover is taken away. If it was me, I wouldn't be able to do it." Mira looked at Lydia with a puzzled expression and then shook her head. Her fourth sister was good at everything. Her only disadvantage was that she was too kind and didn't know how to fight for herself. If this went on, Lydia would suffer losses. Rosie said with disdain, "You think too much. How could Prince Louis fall in love with her? She is so poor and doesn't have any noble temperament. Such a woman can't be appreciated by His Highness. Don't worry, only Princess Lydia deserves His Highness." Mira agreed with Rosie's words. "That's right. I don't believe that His Highness likes her. Even the Crown Prince regards her as nothing. Why would an immortal like His Highness want her? I can make a bet with you. If His Highness likes her, I'll become a commoner forever." "Forget it, Mira. Don't talk nonsense. His Highness is not such a superficial person. How could he judge others by their looks? Besides, Miss Leylani is as beautiful as a fairy. It's normal for His Highness to like her. Let's stop talking about it. Let's go in and take a look at His Highness." After Lydia finished speaking, a trace of sadness flashed across her face. She pulled the people in and left. Soon, the three of them arrived at the main building of the Divine Firmament house. As soon as they entered, they saw Fabian sitting in the front seat. Leylani stood in front of him and felt his pulse. "Your Highness, your pulse was a little erratic just now. I guess it had something to do with the vermin. Did you eat an egg to relieve the pain?" When Leylani spoke, she ignored Lydia and the other two. She knew that Howard let them in, so there was no need to hide the matter from them. Fabian frowned slightly, and a trace of coldness appeared on his handsome face. "Yes, but the effect of eggs is getting worse and worse. I ate 2 just now, and the pain is getting more intense. It seems that the toxicity of the poison has worsened." Hearing that, Leylani's expression suddenly became serious. The boiled egg could relieve his pain, but it wouldn't last long. The vermin had lost interest in the eggs and wanted to swallow Fabian's blood, so he felt more and more painful. Hearing that, Lydia's beautiful little face suddenly became worried. After bowing to Fabian, she nervously stepped forward and looked at him with concern. "Your Highness, Aunt asked me to bring you some rare herbs. Can you ask the doctor to see if they will be useful?" Fabian gave Lydia a stern look, and his eyes did not stay on her face for more than 3 seconds. Then he looked at Leylani and said, "Miss Millington is the doctor. Bring the herbs to her and let her have a look." Yes. Lydia didn't expect that Leylani was a doctor. She couldn't help but look up at her, and the worry in her eyes disappeared. To think that Lydia was still thinking about whether Leylani was Fabian's lover. Now that she knew that Leylani was just a doctor, Lydia was relieved. At this time, a maid brought the herbs in and asked Leylani to check them. Then, Leylani began to check everything carefully. Seeing Leylani's serious expression, Rosie's eyes were full of doubts. When did Leylani become a doctor? She was obviously a good-for-nothing who didn't even know how to read. How could she know any medical skills? Rosie didn't believe it. She definitely didn't believe that Leylani could detoxify Fabian's poison. Moreover, Leylani actually made up a way to relieve his pain by eating eggs, which was too foolish. Could Leylani be there to deceive Prince Louis? No, Rosie couldn't let His Highness be deceived, and she couldn't let Leylani succeed. Thinking of this, Rosie took a step forward and suddenly knelt at Fabian's feet. She knelt on the ground and said, "Your Highness, this Leylani is a liar. You can't trust her. She used to be a weak and useless person. She can't detoxify any poisons at all. There is no way to stop the pain by eating eggs in this world. She's just talking nonsense. She wants to confuse you, Your Highness. Please investigate her carefully." Seeing Rosie jump out to speak up against her, Leylani raised her eyebrows slowly. She was not surprised at all. After all, it was normal for a person like Rosie to do such a thing. Seeing this, Lydia and Mira were also shocked. They had never come into contact with Leylani before, so they did not know who she really was. Thus, they did not doubt her. However, when they heard Rosie's words, their hearts skipped a beat. That was especially the case for Mira. As soon as she heard that Fabian might be deceived, she was so agitated that she accused Leylani indiscriminately. "Well, it turns out that you are a liar. You want to lie to His Highness. Now that you are exposed in public, you have nothing to say, don't you? Your Highness, please ask someone to arrest her and punish her. Don't let this kind of deception continue. How dare she cheat her way into Prince Louis' mansion? Is she crazy?" When Fabian heard their conversation, he frowned unhappily. However, he did not stop them. Instead, he looked at Leylani closely. Even if he had seen Leylani use the antidote in the general's mansion, he still suspected her. Like them, he also wanted to find out whether Leylani had any medical skills or not, and whether the omnipotent antidote in the general's mansion was personally made by her. If they put a little pressure on Leylani, they might be able to get something out of her. If he found that Leylani looked frightened, nervous, and flustered, he would consider whether to let her treat him. He had not yet begun to trust Leylani. When Lydia heard Mira's words, she quickly tugged at her sleeve and said, "Mira, don't be agitated. His Highness is so powerful that he knows how to differentiate between truth and lies. I think Miss Leylani's method of checking herbs is quite skilled, and her method of feeling one's pulse is also very good. She is more serious than the imperial physician in the palace. She doesn't look like a person who doesn't know any medical skills." Being praised by Lydia like that, Fabian immediately felt chagrined. He was not a god. How could he know the truth about everything? Despite this, Lydia's words made him feel at ease. He also felt that Leylani's expression became serious when she was treating him. She was more focused than the imperial physicians in the palace. She was indeed a qualified doctor. When she heard that Lydia was speaking up for her, Leylani raised an eyebrow at her and revealed a friendly smile. When people treated her well, she naturally knew what they meant. She was not the kind of person who would be cold-hearted blindly. Mira pouted indignantly. "Lydia, why are you always speaking up for her? You always go against me. You're really going too overboard." After that, she stomped her feet in anger. Rosie was also very angry. No, she would never believe that Leylani could suddenly understand medical skills. There was no such person in the world. "Your Highness, do you also believe that a good-for-nothing can suddenly become a genius? If she wants to learn medicine, it would take her at least 8 to 10 years to learn it. However, she has been mediocre and lazy all these years. She can't even read. How can she learn medicine?" Rosie spread out her hands and looked unconvinced. She couldn't stand Leylani being honored as a guest of honor by Fabian because of her deceit. Rosie felt that she had to expose Leylani and show that woman's true self in front of everyone. After carefully examining the herbs in the basket, Leylani closed the basket and looked at Rosie calmly. "You don't sleep with me every day. How do you know that I didn't study medicine in the general's mansion? You only saw that I didn't study outside. Do I have to study like a scholar? Are you so sure that I can't read? Do you want me to recite some medical content for you? If I said that I had a master to guide me, I'm afraid you wouldn't believe it, would you?" A master's guidance. When Fabian heard that, his beautiful golden eyes suddenly widened, and the coldness on his handsome face relaxed a little. Nothing else could explain Leylani's sudden transformation from a good-for-nothing to a genius. If she really wanted to explain, there was only one reason. She had a famous master to teach her in secret. That made sense. Rosie opened her mouth slightly and looked at Leylani in disbelief. As for Leylani, she clapped her hands, trying to get rid of the dust from the herbs. "If I don't tell you the truth, you will treat me as a charlatan. I have to tell you that there is a famous master behind me who secretly taught me medicine. Only then can you relieve your anger, right? Well, you are so awesome. You forced me to tell you my secret." After saying that, she walked to Fabian and looked at him calmly, saying, "Your Highness, everyone has their own difficulties and secrets. The reason why I kept it a secret before was that I was afraid that my domineering and ruthless fifth sister would find out about it. I am being victimized for being talented. If she knows that I know medicine, she will definitely be jealous of me and deal with me, so that I can't study medicine at ease. How can I fight against them alone? Now, Rosie has forced out my secret. If Amber knows it, she will definitely come to find trouble with me. In order to help me relieve the poison in your body, Your Highness, please give an order to keep this matter a secret. Don't let this news spread out and don't expose my privacy. Otherwise, I won't dare to detoxify you." After saying that coldly, Leylani looked like she was about to stop treatment, which made Howard anxious. At the same time, he looked at Rosie with disgust. Rosie looked at Leylani in disbelief. Fabian's red lips curled up coldly, and his beautiful eyes met with Leylani's crystal-like eyes. He glanced at her and saw that she was righteous, proud, and upright. She did not look like a person who was guilty and afraid at all. She seemed to have a well-thought-out plan. It was obvious that she was very confident in herself. Only those with real strength could have such confidence. He frowned and suddenly said in a deep voice, "I believe in Leylani. Rosie, you can't tell others her secrets. Anyone who disobeys my order will be killed." "Ah!" Rosie crossed her arms in disbelief. Fabian actually chose to believe in Leylani and made such a decision in an instant. Fabian was obviously a suspicious person and never easily trusted others. Rosie didn't expect that he would trust Leylani so easily. It was really shocking. She couldn't believe that Leylani held such a high position in Fabian's heart. "Miss Lindsay, I also trust Miss Leylani." Lydia smiled and showed her white teeth. Seeing that Lydia actually believed in Leylani, Mira stood in front of Rosie and supported her. "Your Highness, you've always been fair and just. You allow me to trust Rosie, don't you?" Leylani was as pale as Mira. Mira already worshipped Prince Louis so highly. How could she not believe him? Fabian acted as if he did not hear what Mira had said. He ignored her and looked straight at Leylani. As soon as their eyes met, Leylani found that the man's gaze was very cold and deep. She didn't dare to look at him and quickly lowered her head. Damn it, Fabian was worthy of being the god of war of the Jomari kingdom. His eyes were so fierce that ordinary people didn't dare to look at him at all. They couldn't bear the pressure in his gaze. He was the kind of person who could kill people with one look, wasn't he? Moreover, his eyes were very beautiful. When he looked at people, they would always think that he was interested in them and that there was affection in his eyes, which was different from looking at others. In fact, that was not the case at all. Like those male stars, their eyes were deep and beautiful. When you attended their concert, they casually glanced around the audience. You would think that they were looking at you. You would be happy in your heart and think that you were different from others. In fact, in their eyes, you were just like everyone else. Therefore, even if Fabian looked at her with that kind of deep gaze, she did not show any reaction at all on the surface. She muttered in her heart and treated him like she did everybody else. Upon hearing Mira's words, Rosie's fighting spirit and courage rose. She rose to her feet and said to her sister, "Princess Mira trusts me now. The winner has yet to be decided. Why don't we make a bet? If you can neutralize His Highness' poison, you can punish me by making me greet customers at the brothel for 3 days. All I need to do is to greet them. If you can't detoxify the poisons, then I'll punish you and make you greet customers for 3 days. What do you say?" Leylani snorted in her heart. Why did Rosie like to bet so much? Could it be that Rosie had lost last time, so she was so angry that she decided to bet again, hoping that she could win this time? To greet guests at the entrance of the brothel, one must be dressed like a woman working in a brothel. Although she didn't sell herself or show off, when a young lady from a high-ranking official's family stood there in such an outfit, it would be big news that would cause a sensation in the whole city. If that kind of thing was known to others, then the reputation of the woman would be ruined. Young masters of aristocratic families might marry a woman who had drunk dirty water for their own interests, but no one would marry a woman who greeted guests in a brothel. As long as a woman was involved in the word brothel, even if it was just a bet, she would not be able to marry a good man. Not to mention a high-class mansion like Prince Louis's mansion. Even those ordinary nobles didn't dare to choose such a daughter-in-law under public opinion. Rosie wanted to kill Leylani with one blow. The 3 herbs were extremely difficult to find, therefore she was not sure if she could cure the poison in Prince Louis's body. Therefore, she did not dare to agree easily to such a bet. "I won't bet with you. How can you put His Highness in such a bet? If we can't cure His Highness' poison, you will be very happy, won't you?" Leylani raised her eyebrows and made Rosie kneel on the ground again. "Please don't be angry, Your Highness. I didn't mean that. I was just afraid that she would cheat you. Therefore, I made a bet with her. I just wanted to teach her a little lesson. Although she is guilty and did not dare to make a bet, she is right. I should not do this. Your poison will be cured, and you will be safe and sound for the rest of your life." Rosie was so scared that she trembled. She gritted her teeth and broke out in a cold sweat. Leylani was so smart that she did not dare to make such a bet with the life and death of Your Highness. How could she dare to make such a bet? However, after glancing at her coldly, Fabian said, "It doesn't matter. I am not a pedantic person. I am also very curious about the result of this bet. Leylani, you can make a bet with her." Upon hearing this, it turned out that on the surface, Fabian was a cold, arrogant, and unreasonable person, but inside was a man who liked to watch the fun. At that time, as soon as the result of the bet was announced, the brothel would definitely be filled with people. It would be very lively. "But Your Highness, I really don't want to bet." Leylani hesitated for a moment. She was really afraid of losing. She dared to guarantee for ordinary diseases, but this was a mysterious poison, and she had never cured it before. She did not dare to be despised and ridiculed by everyone in the brothel. Hearing this, Rosie became more proud. "Leylani, you must be feeling guilty that you don't dare to make a bet. I thought you really have some skills to solve His Highness's problem. I didn't expect you to be a charlatan. Since you are confident in yourself and dare to guarantee that you can cure His Highness, why don't you dare to make a bet? There is only one reason why you don't dare. It is that you don't have the confidence to can't cure His Highness. Since you can't cure His Highness, why did you come here? Don't waste His Highness' time. You are guilty, useless, and deceiving. Therefore, you don't dare to make a bet. You just want to delay His Highness' time to find other reputable doctors." Being provoked by Rosie's words, the bottom of her heart suddenly surged. She raised her eyebrows coldly and looked at Rosie sharply. "Who said I don't dare to bet? In front of everyone here, I accept your bet. If you lose, don't deny it." Seeing that Leylani was finally stimulated to accept the bet, Rosie was very proud in her heart, but she did not dare to show it on her face. "Well, with the witnesses of His Highness and the 2 princesses, we will write 2 copies of the bet agreement. At that time, no one is allowed to deny it." "Fine with me. I'm not afraid." Leylani had never been afraid of anyone before. Then, under the witness of the three people, Rosie and Leylani wrote down the bet agreement, signed their names respectively, and asked Lydia and Mira to sign as witnesses. As for Fabian, he would not do such a thing as signing his name as a witness. In this way, Leylani and Rosie made a bet that if in 15 days, if Leylani could not cure the poison, she would be punished, and she would have to pretend to be an exposed woman in the brothel to receive guests at the gate of the brothel for 3 days. If she could undo the poison in 15 days, Rosie would naturally be punished. The time limit was 15 days. As soon as Leylani accepted this bet, she had a high fighting spirit in her heart. She had to work hard. She could not lose. She had to cure Prince Louis's poison with what she had learned all her life. She definitely could not lose. She was a person who would never admit defeat. Seeing the burning fighting spirit in Leylani's eyes, Fabian narrowed his eyes slightly. He was glad that he did not stop them from betting. In this way, the girl in front of him seemed to be more energetic. After the bet with Leylani, Howard wanted to send Lydia and the others out. However, Lydia volunteered to stay and help him. She said that she knew a lot of great doctors in the field and hoped that these people's network could help to cure His Highness's poison. If she did not leave, Mira would not leave either. In terms of Rosie's status, she should not have stayed in Prince Louis's manor. However, she said that she had to supervise the whole process of the bet and carefully supervise the detoxification of His Highness poison so that Howard could let her stay there. Fabian did not want any of them to stay. He really hated too many women coming in and out of the mansion. However, seeing Lydia's devout attitude and noble character, she should be helpful in curing the poison. Therefore, he nodded and let them stay. As for Mira and Rosie, he did not even spare them a glance from beginning to end. Howard arranged for Lydia and the other two to stay in a small pavilion that was very close to the Divine Firmament House. That pavilion was called the Subdivine Attic. It was a side building of the Divine Firmament House and was very close to the Divine Firmament House. Then, Howard sent Lydia and the others to the Subdivine Attic for a rest and left Leylani alone. At this moment, in the hall, there was no other person except for Leylani and Fabian. The decoration of the hall was low-key but luxurious. There were all the best mahogany furniture in it. Because the color of these furniture was too deep, it gave people a strong sense of oppression and suffocation. Fabian narrowed his eyes and looked at Leylani from head to toe. "Have you seen the herbs brought by my mother? Have you found the 3 kinds of precious Chinese medicine?" Leylani shook her head. "These herbs are very precious, but there isn't the one we need. If the medicine is incorrect, it is useless no matter how expensive it is. Your Highness, don't worry. I've written down the characteristics of the 3 kinds of traditional Chinese medicine. I'll ask Howard to send someone to look for them quickly. As soon as there's news, I'll take action immediately and help you detoxify." After saying that, she stood still and wondered if Prince Louis could stop staring at her with scrutiny, probing, and suspicious eyes all the time. If he kept staring at her like that, it would give people a strong sense of oppression. As the king of a high position, he naturally would not have this kind of uncomfortable feeling. However, for a young lady, how could she stand such a test? Fortunately, she had seen a lot of people in the modern world. She had seen many leaders and high officials of various countries who wanted to invite her to treat them. Although they were leaders, there were also many bodyguards and guards, and their manners were very friendly. Under the concept of equality between men and women, she was not afraid of meeting leaders of the government. However, in a feudal society with a clear hierarchy, she was still a little afraid of the place where the superior would kill anyone at will. Of course, no matter how scared she could not show it. If her colleagues knew about it, they would laugh their heads off. Therefore, she was neither humble nor arrogant. She stood there calmly and answered all kinds of questions from Fabian. "Who is the famous teacher behind you who helped you?" When Fabian spoke, his voice was like a stone falling into the water, beating Leylani's heart. Leylani rolled her eyes and replied, "Well, can I not answer now? My master asked me to keep it a secret for him. I think he has his own difficulties." "Nonsense. There was no such person at all. How could she answer him? She could only make up a story. Fabian squinted his eyes in confusion and asked again, "Where did you learn your method of detoxification? Does your master also know how to poison others?" Hearing this, Leylani's heart was hanging high in the air. Leylani thought to herself that this smart and handsome fox actually set up a hole for her to jump into. No wonder people called him the fox from the grassland who liked to cheat others. If she admitted that her master knew how to poison, and her master's identity was top secret, he would definitely suspect that her master was the killer of the mysterious organization that had poisoned him. This wouldn't do. She couldn't fall into his trap. After thinking for a while, she suddenly pushed her hand casually and pretended to be indifferent. "Well, no matter how powerful my master is, he is just a doctor. He only knows how to cure diseases and doesn't know how to poison at all, let alone this mysterious poison. This evil skill of poison is very strange. If you believe it, it will be true. If you don't believe it, it won't be true. I also accidentally saw it from an ancient book. I have not tried to cure it myself, so I can't guarantee that I can cure your highness." "What ancient book? Can you let me see it?" Fabian asked coldly, staring at Leylani with cold eyes. Leylani could not help but curse the prince in her heart. He was so detailed, as though he was doing a background check. She thought for a moment, scratched her head, and said, "It's the kind of old books sold by people in the streets. Some books record some strange and weird secret skills, such as Chiman Dungia, 5 Elements 8 diagrams, palace history, martial arts secret books, ancient medical books, and so on. When I'm free, I like to buy them and read them, so I'm a little interested in them. As for where the books are, I was afraid that my father would find out that I have been reading these orthodox books. Therefore, I burned them after reading them, so they were gone now. However, the contents of the books are firmly planted in my mind." Fabian squinted his eyes fiercely, and a thin layer of anger appeared on his face. He thought to himself that Leylani was really a powerful little fox. How could she respond to his every move without missing a single word? She obviously did not tell him the truth. How dare she lie to him and treat him as a 3-year-old child? It would not be a problem for such a clever little girl to be used by him. If the enemy took advantage of him through her and tried to hurt him, he would not be able to guarantee her life. Thinking of this, Fabian frowned slightly and said in a magnetic voice, "If I can't find these 3 herbs, does it mean that the poison won't be able to be removed from my body?" Leylani was stunned for a moment. She had not thought about it yet. The poison was different from other poisons. The antidote of other poisons could be replaced with traditional Chinese medicine of the same characteristics, but the poison could not. Suddenly, as if she had thought of something, she looked up and said seriously, "Your Highness, general poison can only be cured by the person who had made the poison. Have you sent anyone to investigate the whereabouts of the killer? As long as you catch the killer, maybe you can force her to remove the poison for you." This time, Fabian had 2 ways out. Fabian raised his eyebrows coldly. He had sent people to track down Ghostina. Unfortunately, Ghostina hid too well, and his men had not found her yet. If that was not the case, he would not have placed his hopes on Leylani. Seeing Fabian's fierce expression, Leylani immediately knew that he might not be able to catch the killer. Therefore, he had to look for her to detoxify. At this time, Fabian faintly felt that his stomach was churning, as if there were many insects biting him together. His big hand with clear joints suddenly grabbed a jade pot. However, in an instant, the jade pot was broken. As soon as Leylani saw it, she found that his right hand had been cut by the broken jade, and black blood flowed out. Leylani was shocked and hurried forward. "Your Highness, are you poisoned again? Let me have a look at your hand." "How dare you?" Seeing that Leylani was going to touch his hand, Fabian said coldly. At the same time, he withdrew his hand as if he hated her touch very much. Leylani could not help rolling her eyes secretly. Did Prince Louis really hate women so much? This man's character was very strange and unpredictable. "Your Highness, I'm a doctor. If you don't let me see your hands, how can I treat you?" Even though she was angry, she still had an apologetic smile. What a joke. She had to take the risk of her life to help him detoxify. She would never do such a thing again. Hearing this, Fabian frowned slightly and did not answer her. Instead, he spread out his hand and let her have a look. When Leylani looked at his hand, she suddenly frowned seriously. She saw that the jagged-shaped wound in the palm of his hand became bigger than before, and there was black blood flowing out of it. There seemed to be a white ulm wriggling in the blood. There seemed to be many bugs in the poison. They were about to come out of his palm. No, she had to find a way to temporarily control the growth of these insects. She thought of the 12 kinds of traditional Chinese medicine she had bought before, and recalled the solution in the elderly's book. She quickly said to Fabian, "Your Highness, I can try to remove the newly grown ulm first, which could relieve your pain." This ulm was born from the golden silkworm poison and the snake poison. The longer it grew in the body, the more painful the stomach of poisoned person would be. If it were not for Fabian's great endurance and his strong body, anyone else would have died of pain. She originally wanted to cure the poison after finding the 3 precious Chinese medicine, but looking at the situation now, it could not wait. She would try to see if she could kill these little worms first, and find the 3 kinds of traditional Chinese medicine before killing the golden silkworm poison. Hearing the words of Leylani, Fabian raised his beautiful phoenix-like eyes coldly, and there was an imperceptible glimmer of hope in his eyes. At this time, Leylani's words were like a lifeboat. He could not help but look at her carefully. "How long will it take?" Fabian's voice was cold, revealing a strong aura that could not be defied. Leylani could not help but criticize him in her heart. His face was really dark. She was obviously helping him, but he still looked as cold as an iceberg. "Fine, treat me coldly. Go ahead, be arrogant all you want," she thought. "I'll arrange for Yulia to brew the medicine right away. When everything is ready, I'll bring it to you right away." After saying that, she was about to go out. This guy's aura was too strong. She did not want to be in the same room as him at all. It was too oppressing. "You'd better hurry up. I don't have much patience. If you can't cure my poison within 15 days, you know what will happen to you," Fabian said coldly. After he finished speaking, the surrounding temperature instantly dropped to the bottom of the valley. It was obviously late autumn, but it made Leylani felt that the house was freezing cold. After she gritted her teeth and nodded, she walked out of the hall unwillingly. It was really like accompanying a tiger. Fabian had asked her questions with a righteous face a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, he began to threaten her. It seemed that she had to get rid of his poison, otherwise her life would be in danger. What a cold-blooded man. She was almost fooled by his appearance. She thought that a good-looking man would be kind. Only then did she realize that he was not kind at all. He was the most evil-hearted man. How dare he threaten her? He was the kind of person with a human face and a beast's heart. After walking out of the Divine Firmament house, Howard personally brought Leylani into the subdivine attic. At this time, Lydia, Mira, and Rosie settled down in the subdivine attic respectively. However, the 3 of them were arranged by Howard on the first floor, while Howard arranged Leylani's and Yulia on the second floor alone. The reason was that Leylani needed to detoxify the prince. The surrounding environment must be clean so as to ensure her sleep and prevent her from being distracted. Leylani's room was naturally the largest and most luxurious. After Leylani and Yulia moved in, they were not happy because their room was more luxurious than that of Lydia's. On the contrary, she was worried. Prince Louis was currently hosting her with delicious food and drinks because he placed his hopes on her. It was fine if she could cure the poison, but if she couldn't, she would immediately fall from heaven to hell. Compared with the threat of death, these external things were nothing. After putting away the first aid kit and putting everything down, Leylani hurriedly asked Yulia and Howard to ask someone to boil medicine for her. She distributed the 12 herbs and asked Howard to prepare 12 jars. Then she set up a fire and began to boil them. Soon the water in the jar was boiled, and there was a strong smell of medicine in it. Leylani was very familiar with these medicinal fragrances. In her previous life, she was proficient in traditional Chinese medicine, and almost every day she would order the nurses to make medicine for her patients. While they were cooking, The three people downstairs all came out when they smelled the fragrance of medicine. Lydia looked at the 12 neatly arranged medicine pots in the garden and could not help but admire them. "Miss Leylani, you're really amazing. You know how to differentiate herbs. Could it be that the poison in His Highness's body can be cured by using this medicine?" Leylani smiled. "It's not enough. These ordinary traditional Chinese medicine can only solve the basic poison. In order to completely detoxify it, I still need several precious herbs." Of course, Leylani would not be so stupid as to tell others how to detoxify, nor would she tell anyone how serious the poison in His Highness was. These things must be kept secret so as not to be heard by those with ulterior motives. When Mira heard this, she snorted disdainfully. "She's amazing just because she knows how to brew medicine? Lydia, it's not like you have not seen much of the world. Why are you praising her so much? Have you forgotten that the patient who lives with us in the house is the one who is truly proficient in medicine? She is much better than her because she had carried a medicine jar and is studying it every day." Lydia's beautiful eyes turned slightly, and she suddenly scolded, "Are you talking about Princess Sarah of the great Yan Kingdom? She has been in poor health since she was a child, therefore she made medicine for herself to recuperate. You must not call her a patient or something like that. It will be bad if others hear you." Mira pursed her lips in disdain. "I'm just telling the truth. Princess Sarah knows a few things about traditional Chinese medicine. I dare say that there's no traditional Chinese medicine in this world that Princess Sarah doesn't know. Princess Sarah has been able to discern herbs since she was a child, and she has a talent for recognizing herbs. She's even better at recognizing herbs than the imperial physicians in the palace. Is she any better than Princess Sarah?" Mira thought that her sarcasm would make Leylani embarrassed, but she did not expect that Leylani did not feel anything at all. She glanced at her and said, "I'm worried about not being able to find a few herbs. If this Princess Sarah you're talking about is so powerful, can you send someone to invite her over? I'll ask her." Lydia looked at Leylani and said with a smile, "This morning, Princess Sarah wanted to come with us to visit your highness, but my aunt felt that she was not in good health. She was afraid that her illness would spread to your highness, therefore she did not allow her to come. I saw her gloomy expression at that time. She was very disappointed. Does she like His Highness Prince Louis? That was why she was so sad." Mira smiled gloatingly and poked Lydia's arm again. "Lydia, Aunt is very kind to you. As long as she finds out that someone likes His Highness, she will quickly kill it in the cradle. In order to consolidate your position in His Highness's heart, Aunt has done a lot of work. His Highness treats you differently from others. He values you the most. I saw him secretly looking at you the last time. His eyes were full of affection, just like looking at his sweetheart. It seems that you will be the future Prince Louis's wife. No one would dare to compete with you." Hearing this, Lydia blushed and quickly glared at Mira. "Mira, what are you talking about? Don't talk nonsense. I don't want to be Prince Louis's wife." Although she said so, Lydia was very happy in her heart. Her aunt was really good to her. She knew that Sarah liked Prince Louis, therefore she found an excuse to stop her from visiting. Moreover, she did not know that Prince Louis was secretly peeping at her with a loving look. When she heard Mira's words, her face was as red as a beetroot. Her body was burning hot and her face was flushed with embarrassment. However, her heart was filled with happiness, as if she had just eaten honey. However, His Highness was now poisoned. If she could not cure him, what should she do? After listening to their conversation, Leylani finally understood why they were jealous when they saw Howard lured her in at the beginning. It turned out that Lydia was Fabian's lover. It seemed that Lydia also loved Fabian very much. They were secretly in love with each other and had feelings for each other. In addition to curing the poison, she had to stay away from Fabian so as not to be misunderstood. Lydia's heart ached for Fabian's body. When she heard Leylani's words, she promised her, "What kind of traditional Chinese medicine are you looking for? Tell me the name and characteristics. I'll ask Princess Sarah to see if she knows it." After a moment of hesitation, Leylani said, "I have not figured out what kind of medicine it is. I'll look for her after I figure it out." Leylani did not tell the truth. After all, those who knew about this matter were all Fabian's trusted subordinates. The traditional Chinese medicine was a matter of life and death. She would not tell others casually. What if the killer knew the characteristics of traditional Chinese medicine and destroyed it in advance? These three kinds of traditional Chinese medicine were rare to begin with. There was only one dragon head tree in the modern world, and no one had ever heard of it in ancient times. It was hard to say whether there was one or not. She could not tell Lydia, as she could not take this risk. At this time, she suddenly saw Rosie secretly walking towards the front of the 12 medicine pots. She seemed to be sneaky and evil. She immediately took a step forward and stood in front of Rosie coldly. "What are you doing? Get back!" Rosie was shocked by Leylani's actions. She took a step back reflexively. When she looked at Leylani's defensive eyes, she immediately shouted, "Leylani, how dare you shout at me? How dare you? Why did you ask me to step back? What's wrong with me standing here?" She was actually yelled at by this good-for-nothing like a clown. She was so angry that her lungs almost exploded. With a sharp look in her eyes, she stared at Rosie coldly. "This is His Highness's medicine. You sneaked in just now. Who knows what you want to do? If something goes wrong with this medicine and His Highness's treatment is wrong, who will be responsible for it?" If there was a problem with His Highness's medicine, the first one to be responsible was Leylani. She had the responsibility of keeping an eye on it. Therefore, she had to keep an eye on these medicines at all times and never let anyone have the opportunity to take action. When Rosie heard this, her face turned pale instantly, and then she became angry from embarrassment, and her face turned green. "Who do you think I am? I have the responsibility to supervise you, and I want to see those medicines. No one knows what kind of medicine you used, but you made it so mysterious that you did not let others see it. Maybe there is something wrong with it. If there is any problem, I will take responsibility. You don't have to worry about it. If you want to see it, come and see. But I have said that if there is something wrong with the medicine, it would have something to do with you." Leylani shouted coldly. As soon as she finished her words, Rosie was so scared that she took 2 steps back. When Rosie heard that she had to take responsibility after seeing the medicine, she quickly waved her hand and said, "Everyone saw it. I did not approach the medicine at all. If something happens, she is fully in charge of it. It has nothing to do with us." Seeing Rosie's expression, Lydia's beautiful face was flushed. She looked at Rosie indifferently and said, "Miss Rosie, can you speak less? Don't disturb the doctor from brewing the medicine. If you affect Miss Leylani, His Highness will definitely not spare you." Seeing that Lydia was angry and even mentioned Prince Louis, Rosie lowered her head and muttered in a low voice, "You're too partial to her. She was just a proton princess. No matter how beautiful she was still in the hands of others. No matter how beautiful she was still a chess piece of the White Wolf King and a tool for marriage. If the White Wolf King really loved her, why didn't he raise her well in the White Wolf Kingdom? Instead, he took her as a proton and placed her at the Jomari Kingdom. With the protection of consort Roselle, they lived a free life. If it was a proton or a princess from other kingdom, they would be watched all the time. They would live in a luxurious and prison-like mansion. Without the order of the Jomari Kingdom, they could not return to the White Wolf Kingdom for the rest of their lives. Even if they were princesses, they would still be bullied when they were out. When the 2 countries had a good relationship, they would have a good life. Once the 2 countries started a war, the Jomari Kingdom's emperor would first slaughter the protons and princesses. If he used them as tools for offering sacrifices, their fate would be very tragic. Although Rosie was only the daughter of the Minister of Justice, she was much more free than them. She could go wherever she wanted. Her actions were not restricted, and no one was always strict with her. What were they fighting in front of her? They were not Jomari Kingdom princesses. She did not need to respect them. Why should she listen to them? If it weren't for Lydia's beauty and the fact that she wanted to use her to get to know the princes of the Lawrence family, she would not have been bullied by Lydia. Soon, Lydia took Mira and Rosie away. After Lydia returned to her room, Rosie suddenly flashed into Mira's room. Mira was playing with the snake bracelet on her right wrist. When she saw Rosie coming in, she got up and asked, "Why are you here?" A hint of coldness flashed across Rosie's eyes. She picked up the teacup on the table and poured herself a cup of tea. After gulping it down, her impetuous heart finally calmed down. "Mira, can you tolerate Leylani being so arrogant? Look at her expression. She is so proud just because she thinks she knows a few kinds of traditional Chinese medicine. She is so arrogant that she doesn't care about you at all," Rosie said as she observed Mira's expression, hoping to draw her to her side. Mira only focused on playing with her snake bracelet and painted her fingernails. She said with a sullen expression, "I'm not familiar with her, so I don't know who she is. I don't have any hatred with her, so I don't care about her. I just want to be in a good relationship with Lydia. When she marries Prince Louis in the future, I'll marry him as a concubine and live an ordinary life." When Rosie heard these words, she hated Mira for not being able to live up to her expectations. She could tell that Lydia was not the only one who liked Prince Louis. Mira was also very fond of him too. Mira knew her limits. Knowing that she would not become Prince Louis's wife, she decided to be his concubine. After thinking for a while, she sneered and said, "Mira, I think you are very beautiful, even more beautiful than Lydia. You are so excellent. Why should you belittle yourself? With your background and appearance, it is more than enough for you to marry Prince Louis as his wife. You have a great chance. Why is your ambition so small that you only want to be a concubine?" When Mira heard this, she quickly waved her hand. "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm not as beautiful as Lydia. She's as beautiful as a fairy. I don't dare to compare with her. That's because you're still young and have not grown up yet. When you're older than Lydia, I don't know how many men you'll be able to capture when you've grown up. Besides, beauty isn't the most powerful weapon. Look at the current empress. She looks ordinary, but she's the empress. She's lucky, has a good family background, and comes from a good family. She'll eventually age. When we're old, we'll be the same old ladies. We'll compete for status. You're a princess and you're from a noble family. If you don't seize the opportunity to fight for yourself, you'll waste more of your status. How can a small concubine be worthy of your status?" Rosie was a little exasperated. When she saw Mira's brash character, she did not expect her to be so inferior. Mira was stunned for a moment. She took a bronze mirror and looked at it. Looking at the lovely girl in the mirror, she sighed and said, "Can I really be compared with Lydia? However, Prince Louis only likes women like Lydia." Seeing that Mira was persuaded by her, Rosie took advantage of the situation and said, "You don't have to marry Prince Louis. Everyone wants to marry Prince Louis, but he is like a pearl in the sky. People will fight for him. In the end, they will not be able to get him even if they suffer great losses. It's a waste of time. Besides, Prince Louis is now poisoned. Many famous doctors in the world can't cure him. What if something happens to him? What are you going to do?" "No, nothing will happen to His Highness. He will be safe and lucky. Don't talk nonsense." Mira looked at Rosie nervously. "I'm just making an analogy. Everyone wants to fight for the best thing, but there are too many people who want it, so there is little chance of success. Why don't you grab another good thing? The success rate will be much higher, and this thing is not bad. If you can't become Prince Louis's wife, you can consider our crown prince. The crown prince had just divorced Leylani. You are so beautiful, so you will definitely have a chance. When you become the crown prince's wife and the empress, no woman in the world can be compared with you. Keep your voice down. Don't talk nonsense. The crown prince had just broken off the engagement with Leylani. How can he divorce her?" Mira was curious. "Isn't it only possible to divorce after they get married?" Rosie snorted disdainfully. "There's no difference between breaking off the engagement and getting a divorce. She was still abandoned by the crown prince. I think Lydia likes Leylani very much. She thinks so highly of her that she does not even care about you. Sure enough, it's because you two are not from the same mother. If you were born from the same mother, she would not be so rude to you." Rosie's words stunned Mira for a moment. A hint of coldness flashed across her eyes. How could she not know this? She and Lydia looked good on the surface, but all of this was based on the foundation of her dependence on Lydia. Lydia's mother was Consort Anna. Her mother was only a lowly foot-washing maid by Consort Anna's side. When she was washing the White Wolf King's feet, she was doted on by the White Wolf King. That was why she was pregnant. In the end, she was promoted to a noble person. Her mother's status was not high, and she did not even have a sense of existence. Therefore, at such a young age, she was treated as a proton by the White Wolf King in exchange. Lydia had been doted on by the White Wolf King since she was young. She had also been arranged to be a proton because she shouldered the great responsibility of her family and country, which was different from her goal. She had wanted to live with Lydia for the rest of her life, but when she heard Rosie's words, she could not accept it. Her mother was a weak woman who had no ambitions. She relied on currying favor with Consort Anna to make a living. She herself was even more miserable and ended up as a proton. Rosie was right. If she continued to be passive and relied on Lydia to live, she would have to follow her mother's footsteps and would never be able to control her own life. Moreover, the White Wolf King had warned her that she was only Lydia's vassal and that she was Lydia's stepping stone to climb high. If Lydia needed it one day, she would have to sacrifice her life without hesitation to pave the way for Lydia. However, she hid that in her heart. Instead, she said lightly, "Lydia is not the kind of person you said she is. I believe that she is sincere to me. Don't say such words in the future to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. She is kind and good to everyone, and Leylani is not an exception." When she came out of the small room, Rosie's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. She had been sowing discord for such a long time, but she did not expect that Mira would say that she believed Lydia. What a waste of her time. However, as long as she put in more effort, she would definitely succeed. As long as she continued to do her best to sow discord, one day they would turn against each other. "Lydia, you're helping Leylani, aren't you? If so, I'll provoke your sister to turn against you." After Leylani brewed the medicine, she asked Howard to ask several maids to bring the medicine pot. As a result, a bunch of senior servants came. Seeing the group of senior servants, she could not help but ask Howard, "Is there no little maidservant in Prince Louis's manor?" Howard shook his head and said, "His Highness does not like those young girls. He said that if there were too many young girls, what kind of place would Prince Louis's manor be? Therefore, he only wanted senior servants who had retired from the palace. Don't worry, these senior servants are all the best aunts in the palace. They are sensible, serious, and well-behaved. You can order them however you see fit." Leylani was speechless. She did not expect Prince Louis to be such a person. There were many beautiful women and maids in the Crown Prince's mansion, but Prince Louis turned out to be such a person. It was said that he did not like women and hated women getting close to him. Even the servants in the mansion had to elder women in their 40s. If he did not want those 13 or 14-year-old girls, did he like men? Thinking of this reason, she could not believe it. Wasn't Prince Louis's lover Lydia? Since he had a lover, he could not be a playboy. He must have been saving himself for Lydia. As expected, heroes loved the country, but loved beautiful women more. For the sake of the beauties, they could restrain themselves to such an extent. What a good man. After thinking that to herself, Leylani led the senior servants into Fabian's palace. However, the bedchamber was very quiet at this moment. There was no sound. It was so quiet that even a needle drop could be heard. No matter how quiet Fabian was, it was impossible for him not to make a sound. A bad feeling suddenly rose in her heart. Sure enough, as soon as she walked into the bedroom, she saw a tall body lying on the rosewood table. At this time, he was scratching the table hard with his hands, making the table squeak. Who else could it be but Fabian with a black silver robe and a large back? "Your Highness, what happened to you?" Seeing this situation, Howard stepped forward and quickly helped Fabian up. Leylani also stepped forward and saw Fabian sitting there nervously with cold sweat all over his head. His right nails were full of wood chips and shallow bloodstains. The table was covered with horrible scratches, one line after another, which looked very creepy. I'm fine." Fabian's eyes were a little blurred, and his handsome face froze. Leylani knew that he must have been in great pain because of the poison in his body. Therefore, he laid on the table, hoping to relieve his pain. However, how could his pain be relieved by holding back? He was in too much pain, but he did not want to cry out. Therefore, he grabbed the table with his hands. Even though he was in so much pain that he could not stand up, he gritted his teeth and did not make a sound. If he had not experienced cruel battles before, he would not have been able to endure it. Seeing that Fabian was in so much pain that the blue veins on his forehead stood out, Leylani quickly stepped forward and took out a handkerchief to gently wipe away the sweat on his face. "Your Highness, bear with it. I will get those little bugs out of you right away." Howard looked at her with hope and asked, "Miss Leylani, do you know how to cure the poison?" Leylani took Fabian's hand seriously and said while feeling his pulse, "I'm not sure. I can only try." After that, a cold and serious look appeared on her face. She said to the senior servants, "Hurry up and pour out the medicine soup to cool it down. Then pour the 12 pots of medicine soup into a rice pot, and then pour the residue of the 12 pots of medicine into the rice pot and mix them up. Hurry up and do it." "Yes, Miss Leylani." After the leader, Elaine, received the order, she waved her hand coldly. Emily and Olivia immediately followed and quickly took action. Soon, the sound of pouring medicinal soup and stirring medicinal residues sounded. Leylani quickly sat opposite Fabian and said, "Your Highness, the poison is an evil poison. When we remove the poison, we need someone beside us to recite Bible verses 108 times, because the Bible represents justice, compassion, and specializes in restraining evil and curses. Howard, is there a Bible in the mansion? If there is, please take it and recite it on behalf of your Highness." "Yes, I'll get it right away." After Howard finished speaking, he quickly went to get a copy of the Bible. After he calmed down, he began to chant the incantation with his lips. At this moment, Elaine and the others had already distributed the medicine soup and residue and mixed them together. Seeing this, Leylani asked Elaine to bring a bowl of medicine soup and let Fabian take it. Fabian smelled the strong smell of traditional Chinese medicine and frowned. Although he did not like this smell, he was convinced by the serious look in Leylani's eyes. He believed her this time. Thinking of this, he raised his head and drank the bowl of traditional Chinese medicine. Leylani took the bowl, handed it to Elaine, and then took out a bamboo tube the size of a thermos cup from her medicine box. She asked Yulia to put the mixed medicine residue into the bamboo tube and then burn outside the bamboo tube with a low fire to heat the bamboo tube. Then she ordered Yulia, "Put the mouth of the bamboo tube on the wound on your Highness's right palm. I want to draw out those insects." After that, she turned around sharply and waved her long sleeves. With a wave of her big hand, she unfolded a cloth bag full of silver needles in her medicine box. After that, she quickly took out the silver needles on it and tapped on Fabian's head a few times. Those silver needles were pierced into the vital acupuncture points on Fabian's head, one after another. The series of movements made by Leylani was done in one go, as smooth as flowing water. The white robe flew in front of everyone, and she finished the acupuncture. She looked so cool that the senior servants were stunned and could not move their eyes away. Miss Leylani looked really cool and amazing when she worked hard. At this time, the crowd was convinced by Leylani's acupuncture techniques and speed. All of them held their breath and looked at her. They were so nervous that they did not even dare to breathe. Leylani quickly gave Fabian acupuncture and then said, "If you want to cure the poison, you have to detoxify first. I have placed the needles in the acupuncture points on His Highness's head in order to cooperate with the traditional Chinese medicine you drank just now to expel the poisonous blood. Acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine can detoxify the blood. I ordered them to put 12 kinds of traditional Chinese medicine in the bamboo tube, which are the bug's favorite, and it could attract them out. Emily, hurry up and get the incense ash on the incense table. It'll be useful in a while. Now I'm going to detoxify." When everything was ready, Leylani caught the bamboo tube with her own hands and aimed it into Fabian's palm. At this moment, there was a burst of black blood on the wound on Fabian's right palm. Leylani hurriedly ordered Yulia to use the basin to catch the blood. After a while, there was more and more black blood, which made everyone's hair stand on end. They all stared at Fabian with concern. This is the poisonous blood forced out by traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, Leylani explained to everyone. At this moment, a small white bug came out from Fabian's palm. As soon as Leylani saw it, she quickly took the bamboo tube. The insect looked around and suddenly smelled the traditional Chinese medicine in the bamboo tube and quickly climbed into the bamboo tube. Then it began to eat the traditional Chinese medicine in the bamboo pot. Immediately, more and more white worms climbed out. They scrambled to climb to the bamboo tube and began to compete for the traditional Chinese medicine inside. When they saw the worms, everyone was shocked. The worms were extremely disgusting, crawling and wriggling about, making everyone's hair stand on end. Howard continued to close his eyes and recite the Bible devoutly. When Fabian saw that the poisonous blood was forced out of his body and that the worms were also attracted by the traditional Chinese medicine, his heart suddenly relaxed a lot. All of a sudden, he found that his abdomen was not as painful as before, as if those insects were attracted by traditional Chinese medicine and had stopped biting his flesh. He carefully looked at the serious and professional Leylani, and a trace of appreciation that even he did not notice flashed in his eyes. His beautiful phoenix eyes stared at Leylani, and he stared at her coldly. At this moment, Leylani was focused on luring the worms and was not in the mood to care about anything else. Soon, her bamboo tube was filled. The pot of insects inside were glued together or tied together, which looked very disgusting. Seeing this, Leylani hurriedly asked Emily to bring over the iron box containing the incense ash. Then she poured all the worms and traditional Chinese medicine in the bamboo tube into the incense ash. She then ordered Emily coldly, "Hurry up and burn these worms to death and leave none alive." Emily nodded and quickly put the charcoal into the iron box. As soon as the charcoal was put in, there was a sizzling sound. Then there was a burst of crackling, which was the sound of the explosion of those fat worms. Soon, the group of insects were burned to death in the iron box. At this time, Leylani had filled a barrel of traditional Chinese medicine, and she copied the previous method. She put the bamboo tube on Fabian's wound and continued to attract the worms. Due to the fact that Fabian had attracted too many worms for the first time, there were not many of them left in Fabian's body, so they were sucked out very slowly this time. It was as if they knew that the outside world was very dangerous, therefore they all shrank back and did not dare to come out. However, Leylani was not worried. She held the bamboo tube and focused on guarding it. When Fabian saw her, he found that her forehead was covered with beads of sweat. He looked at Emily and said, "Help her wipe the sweat off her face." "Yes, Your Highness." Emily quickly took out a white handkerchief and carefully wiped the sweat from Leylani's face and neck. After the sweat was wiped away, Leylani frowned as if she had been interrupted. Seeing the bowl of worms that had been burned to ashes, Leylani was secretly happy in her heart. It turned out that elderly Black Witch's method of killing the worms was really useful. Fortunately, she had read this book once, otherwise, she would be useless that day. Looking at the fierce expression on Fabian's face, it seemed that he had gradually returned to normal. He was definitely no longer suffering from abdominal pain. However, she knew that there was a queen worm left in his body, the golden silkworm bug. If she did not get rid of the golden silkworm bug, it would continue to produce a lot of baby worms. At that time, Fabian would suffer from abdominal pain again. While she was thinking, a few small worms came out and looked around. They were really attracted by the fragrance of traditional Chinese medicine and could not help but come out. When they all went into the bamboo tubes to take some traditional Chinese medicine, Leylani found that the poisonous blood flowing out of Fabian's body began to fade, and it was not as black as before. Gradually, the poisonous blood became lighter and lighter, like the color of flesh. If she wanted to turn the poisonous blood into a bright red color, she had to get rid of the golden silkworm queen worm. She tried again with the bamboo tube and found that there were no more small worms. Then she handed the pot to Emily, asking her to burn the pot worms inside to death. Emily did as she was told. Then she sat upright, began to remove the silver needles on Fabian's head, and cleaned up the wounds on his hand. She sprinkled a lot of homemade high-grade ointment on Fabian's right palm, took out the gauze and bandages from the medicine box, wrapped his palm with gauze, and then secured the gauze with a bandage. After doing this, she was so busy that her waist and back were sore, and her hands and feet were sore. She wiped the sweat on her face and said to Fabian sternly, "Your Highness, at present, all the small worms born from the golden silkworm have been removed. Do you still feel pain?" Fabian nodded coldly and took a deep look at Leylani. "I don't feel pain anymore, but there seems to be an itch in my body. That's the golden silkworm that has not been removed yet. When Howard finds the 3 kinds of traditional Chinese medicine, I'll remove the worm for you. I'll definitely get rid of it." Leylani now had great confidence in herself. This was because if the smaller worms could be removed by the elder's method, and so could the golden silkworm. She was just worried that Howard could not find the 3 kinds of traditional Chinese medicine, which was the most difficult thing at the moment. However, she temporarily stopped Fabian's pain. Fabian's body would soon recover by more than half. She had to use the remaining 15 days to quickly find traditional Chinese medicine. If it was said that everyone had doubts about Leylani earlier, everyone now looked at her with admiration and gave her a thumbs up when they saw that she had drawn out the worms with such a method. Miss Leylani did not lie. She really knew how to detoxify, and she did it very well. She succeeded in one try. Everyone said that she was the good-for-nothing daughter of the Millington family and the abandoned daughter of the Millington family. But she did not look like a good-for-nothing. She was obviously a talented genius in medical skills. It seemed that the rumors could not be trusted. At this time, Leylani said to Fabian again, "Your Highness, from now on, I will lure the worms for you every 3 days to prevent the worms from growing and multiplying and endangering your life. But now, the only way is to find the 3 kinds of Chinese medicine as soon as possible. Only by finding these 3 kinds of medicine can I guarantee that I can cure you completely." Fabian nodded coldly and looked at Howard. "Send the order to speed up the search for the 3 kinds of traditional Chinese medicine." "Yes, Your Highness." Howard cupped his hands and nodded. He even grabbed his mouth. Earlier, he had been reciting the Bible, which made his mouth ache. Fortunately, Miss Leylani was a really capable person. She had completely cleaned up the poison in Prince Louis's body, therefore he did not recite the Bible in vain. At this time, the look in his eyes when he looked at Leylani had changed from suspicion to deep worship. "Your Highness, since I have temporarily suppressed the worms in your body, can I go home first and come back to draw the worms for you in 3 days?" Leylani was worried about the red-eyed boy who was locked in the dungeon and wanted to go back and rescue him. "No," Fabian said coldly. "You are not allowed to go anywhere before my poison is completely removed. You can stay in my manor." She glared at Fabian angrily and gave him a cold look. This man is too domineering. He can do whatever he wants. If it weren't for the fact that she had landed in a country ruled by the feudal monarchy, she would have long disregarded Fabian and walked away. Seeing the anger in Leylani's eyes, Fabian raised his red lips coldly and said, "You are really bold." He had sent someone to investigate her and found out that she teased the crown prince and had hit him. He thought it was just an exaggeration. However, seeing her unconvinced look, he knew that this woman was born to be arrogant and could not be tamed easily. After hearing Fabian's words, Leylani was used to having different opinions. She raised her eyebrows in dissatisfaction and said, "My clothes are dirty. Don't tell me that your Highness does not even allow me to go home to change my clothes." "Elaine, what clothes does she want? You can ask someone to make it for her." Fabian looked at Elaine and said coldly, "Yes, Your Highness. I'll prepare Miss Leylani's jewelry and accessories too. Please stay in the prince's mansion at ease. If you need anything, just let me know." As soon as Elaine said that, Leylani quickly touched her forehead. Gosh, why were these people so smart? All of them blocked her way. She should forget it. Madame Patricia would definitely not be in a hurry to deal with the child. Besides, she could just climb over the wall and sneak back in the middle of the night. It was her specialty to climb trees and over the walls. "Did you hear that? Why aren't you leaving?" Seeing that Leylani's eyes were rolling as if she was having some bad idea, Fabian rolled his dark, gold-like eyes and looked at her meaningfully. She must be up to something. How could he let her succeed? Seeing Fabian's cold and arrogant eyes, Leylani ground her teeth hard. She flicked her sleeves and walked out of his bedroom with a cold snort. "Don't be so arrogant. You're lucky to have a good father," she thought. When she became more powerful in the future, she would definitely stand in front of him and look down on him, criticize him, and scold him like this. When she walked out of the divine firmament house, she saw that Elaine, Emily, and Olivia were looking at her differently from before. Elaine looked at Leylani with admiration and carefully flattered her. "Miss Leylani, you're really amazing. You're so good at medicine at such a young age, and you're so proficient. You easily cured half of the poison in His Highness' body and saved his life. You've worked hard. Go to the second floor and have a rest. I'll ask someone to make some good food for you." Emily ran over to support her. "Miss Leylani, do you have any symptoms of waist pain and back pain? I'm good at massage. Do you want me to massage your back? Miss Leylani, are you thirsty? Do you want some flower tea? I'll make it for you right away. Miss Leylani, what color do you like? I'll send a tailor to measure your size right away. How about I make you 16 sets first? 4 sets for spring, summer, autumn, and winter." Seeing that Elaine and the others were so enthusiastic, Leylani touched her forehead and really could not stand it. "I'm not tired, I'm not thirsty, my back is not sore, my feet are not sore, and I don't want to wear clothes. No, I still have to wear clothes. You can make me some clothes to change according to the average size. Miss Leylani, do you think that we are not considerate enough? If His Highness knows about this, he would punish us." Elaine's face was stiff. Leylani was a distinguished guest who had saved half of His Highness's life. She had to treat her well so that she could feel at ease to treat His Highness. Leylani quickly shook her head. "No, you have taken good care of me. I just want to rest now. I can only relieve the remaining half of the poison for His Highness after I have recovered. Elaine, you go to make clothes for me and let Yulia take care of me alone." Aunt Elaine saw that Leylani's attitude was firm and that she wanted to rest. She quickly said, "Please go and have a rest, Miss Leylani. I'll prepare dinner for you." Soon, Elaine left with a group of people. All this was seen by Rosie on the second floor. Rosie pricked up her ears coldly. No way. Leylani had cured half of Prince Louis's poison. Does she really have medical skills? Moreover, she wanted to vomit when she saw how the group of senior servants looked at her desperately. She was thirsty earlier and wanted them to boil some tea for her. In the end, they said that they were going to help Miss Leylani and help her to help detoxify Prince Louis. They were too busy and asked her look for some water to drink herself. After all, she was the daughter of the minister of the Ministry of Justice. How could these wretched slaves neglect her? Since Leylani was able to cure half of the poison so quickly, wouldn't there be a chance for her to remove the other half as well? In this way, it meant that she would lose. If she lost, she would have to wear revealing clothes and go to the entrance of the brothel to receive guests for 3 days. She had to accept the ridicule and contempt of the world. No, as the daughter of a high official, she could never do such a thing. Therefore, she could not lose. Since she could not lose, she could only make Leylani lose. However, if Leylani lost, it meant that Prince Louis could not get rid of the poison. Then, Prince Louis would die. Prince Louis was such a talented and handsome man. If she died, she would be very sad. However, no matter how powerful Prince Louis was, he was not her man. If he was her man, she would try her best to protect him, hoping that he would live 100 years. Since he was not her man, his matters had nothing to do with her. It did not matter to her that the poison had been cured or not. She had to avoid making a fool of herself in front of everyone. Moreover, her father was someone by the crown prince's side. Her father hoped that she would marry the crown prince, and he had been trying his best to follow the crown prince. If Prince Louis died of poisoning, the crown prince would lose one of his strongest opponents. Wouldn't she secretly help her father and the crown prince? Given the relationship between her father and the crown prince, it was not impossible for the crown prince to give her the title of crown prince's wife. Therefore, she was determined not to let Leylani win. She had to do something in the middle to ensure that Leylani would not be able to save Prince Louis. Thinking of this, she did not have the courage to take this step, because she compared the crown prince with Prince Louis. She still felt that Prince Louis was more beautiful and attractive. She really could not bear to see such an elegant and beautiful man die like this. She had always liked Prince Louis and secretly admired him in her heart. Otherwise, why would she follow him to his mansion? Moreover, Prince Louis was much stronger than the crown prince. As long as he wanted to fight for the throne, he could easily take it. If Prince Louis was willing to look at her or like her and marry her, she would not stop Leylani from saving his. On the contrary, she would try her best to help Leylani, even if she would lose the bet. She was willing to. However, did Prince Louis really think highly of her? No, she could not make a decision in a rash. Before making a decision, she had to test Prince Louis's feelings. At this time, it was getting dark. A pale moon hung in the sky, covering the earth with a layer of white shadow. Emily sent people to send food to Lydia, Mira, and Rosie. Elaine led 2 second-class senior servants to send a sumptuous dinner to Leylani. The dinner had fish, meat, nourishing porridge, and chicken soup, which made Rosie angry. They were all guests of Prince Louis' mansion, but they were treated differently. Rosie was in a bad mood. After having a few mouthfuls of rice, she lied to Mira that she wanted to go out for a walk to digest her food. As soon as she walked out of the subdivine attic, she crept to Fabian's bedroom. Because Fabian liked silence very much, there were no guards at the entrance of his bedchamber. The guards were guarding at the gate, therefore no one could enter. Hence, it was normal that no one was on duty at the entrance of his bedchamber. It would be better if no one was on duty. Rosie looked around. When she found that no one was there, she pulled the hem of her clothes and squeezed out a piece of snow-white chest. Then she blushed and walked toward the bedchamber. At this moment, in the subdivine attic, after Leylani heard the news that Yulia came back to report, she immediately put down her chopsticks with a smile and chewed the last piece of fish in her mouth. Did you really see that she had exposed her clothes and walked into Fabian's bedroom? Leylani rolled her eyes. This Rosie was so bold that she dared to covet Prince Louis, her sister's man. Her character was really bad. Yulia nodded firmly. Of course, she was not there for long. I guess she won't be coming back from Prince Louis's bedroom tonight. After all, Prince Louis is also a man. His poison has been cured by half, and his body has recovered well. He must want to find a woman to release his fire. Fortunately, Leylani was smart. She asked Yulia to follow Rosie as soon as she saw her went out. She found out that Rosie was trying to seduce Prince Louis. Leylani coldly raised her phoenix eyes and curled her lips. She did not understand Fabian, but he did not like women to get close to him. It was unknown whether he would accept Rosie or keep himself pure for Lydia. No one knew what Prince Louis was thinking. What if he was a gentleman on the surface, but had been with countless of women in private? Rosie had always played tricks on her and looked like she had no good intentions. How could Leylani allow herself to be bullied by others? She had to teach Rosie a lesson that night. Thinking of this, she got up coldly and went down the second floor with Yulia. At this time, Lydia and Mira had already finished their meal. The senior servants was going to clean up the dishes. The two of them were a little full, therefore they came out to digest the food. When Mira walked out of the room, she looked for Lydia anxiously. As soon as she reached the stairs, she suddenly bumped into Leylani, who had just gone downstairs. This collision made her bones almost fall apart, and when she looked at Leylani, she was not much better. Leylani came down from upstairs and collided with Mira. Her face was twisted in pain, and her arm was about to be dislocated. "Are you blind? Why didn't you look at the road and bump into me? It hurts so much." Mira shouted coldly and used her right hand to hold her bruised left hand. "I was just down the stairs when you suddenly dashed out and bumped into me. You did not even apologize, yet you're still so arrogant," Leylani said in a cold voice. Seeing that she dared to retort, Mira frowned and said angrily, "It's obvious that you bumped into me. How dare you be so stubborn? How dare a young lady like you act arrogantly in front of me?" Although she was a hostage, she was still the princess of a country. She was much more honorable than Leylani. How could she bear such humiliation? Everyone in the manor looked at her nervously and with great respect. She, Leylani, was the only one who did not show any respect to her. When Leylani saw Mira's arrogant and unruly manner, she sneered and said, "Princess?" As the saying goes, a person will be bullied by the weak after losing power. Furthermore, you are a phoenix whose wings have been broken. If you're in the White Wolf Kingdom, there will be someone who would respect you as a princess. I'm sorry, you are now in the Jamari Kingdom territory. You are not our princess. Don't be arrogant in front of me. I'm going to tell the Emperor of the Jamari Kingdom about this and let him know that a young lady in the Jamari Kingdom dared to disrespect the hostage. Does the Jamari Kingdom treat us like this? In this way, no one will dare to exchange hostages to your Jamari Kingdom, Mira said angrily. At the same time, she pinched the snake bracelet on her right wrist, and a cold light was reflected in her eyes. She had thought that Leylani would be scared out of her wits if she mentioned the Emperor of Jamari Kingdom. Unexpectedly, Leylani raised her eyebrows coldly with an indifferent look on her face. Go ahead. You'd better go now. The Emperor of our country is the most reasonable person. He will definitely stand on the right side. Hurry up. Don't say that I did not stop you. If people wanted to be respected, they had to respect others first. How dare she, Mira, tell the Emperor when she was being unreasonable at first? Leylani was not afraid at all. The Emperor was busy with tens of thousands of things every day. Therefore, he had no time to care about these trivial things. Mira was not someone important to the Emperor. Therefore, the Emperor would not interfere in her affairs. Seeing her carefree attitude, Mira was finally angry. She suddenly held the snake bracelet in her right hand and shouted, "I have not liked you since the beginning. How dare you look down on me? I'll teach you a lesson." While Mira spoke, Lydia shouted and was about to stop her. However, Mira had already raised her hand coldly, and her eyes were full of sinister killing intent. She shook her right hand heavily, and a thin string of tungsten wire suddenly flew out of the snake bracelet. Like a snake, the string suddenly rushed forward and quickly reached Leylani's waist. Then, Mira pulled the string, which rolled up the thin Leylani violently and sent her flying. The change happened so fast that before anyone could react, Leylani had been rolled up by the silk thread. When Leylani realized that something was wrong, she had already flown into the air. At this moment, Mira shouted and pulled hard at the string, pulling Leylani toward the big tree in the distance. "If you dare to provoke me, I'll break your heart and lungs." By the time Mira finished speaking, Leylani was already smashed onto the tree. Just as she was about to hit the tree, Leylani suddenly bent her body forward and grabbed it with both hands. She hugged the branch of the tree with lightning speed. She jumped up lightly again, and her petite body jumped onto the tree. Fortunately, she was quick to react. Otherwise, she would have hit against the big tree and her face would be swollen. What was wrong with the bracelet in Mira's hand? Why was it so powerful that she could pull people up with just a random wire string? She had not yet stood still and was still in a state of shock. Mira had already caught up with her under the tree. She continued to use the snake bracelet in her hand. "How dare you dodge? If I don't show you something powerful, you won't know how powerful I am. Look at my soul-taking dart. Fire!" After she said that, she pressed a button on the bracelet. As soon as she pressed the button, hidden weapons in the shape of plum blossoms suddenly flew out of the iron bracelet and flew toward Leylani. Seeing this, Lydia was so anxious that she quickly dragged Mira to stop her. "Mira, stop. Leylani is a doctor who is helping Prince Louis to detoxify. Even His Highness respects her very much. You can't treat her like this." Mira scoffed disdainfully. "I don't care what kind of doctor she is. I only know that she is disrespectful to me. Don't worry, I won't kill her. I am just going to teach her a little lesson." "You are really unruly and unreasonable." Lydia was so anxious that her face turned pale and she stomped her feet on the ground. Rosie's words flashed through Mira's mind, and she immediately said to Lydia, "You're my sister. You are not helping me, but instead you're helping this outsider. What do you take me for?" Lydia pointed at Mira and said helplessly, "If I don't care about you, why would I stop you?" I'm helping you. Do you understand? Mira had always been so unruly. Her father had asked her to come here to help her, but she had always gotten into trouble and needed her to deal with it. She had almost become a person who had to clean up Mira's mess. Mira had a snake bracelet with hidden weapons in her hand, which was left by her mother. She thought that with this bracelet, she would be invincible in the world. She had always used the snake bracelet to scare and teach others a lesson. This snake bracelet was very powerful, but no matter how powerful it was, could it be more powerful than an army? If Prince Louis found out that she had made a scene in his manor this day, he would definitely punish her. At this time, the snake bracelet in Mira's hand had already shot out a lot of soul-taking darts. Those soul-taking darts flew toward Leylani like a miniature iron windmill. The edges of the darts were full of sharp blades. If one was accidentally stabbed by them, his flesh would instantly burst open. In order not to get hurt, Leylani quickly hid behind a big tree. It was fortunate that the tree was so large that Mira's soul-taking dart could not hit her. However, if she was careless and did not hide quickly, she would definitely be injured. Mira was so vicious that she dared to take action in Prince Louis's manor. Originally, Leylani wanted to pretend to be injured by the dart to attract Elaine and the others to come and see, so that Fabian could punish Mira severely. However, she had something more important to deal with, which was Rosie. She could not delay any longer. She had to find a way out as soon as possible. This snake bracelet was too powerful. If the soul-taking dart was stained with poison, it could really take away one's soul in an instant. However, it seemed that these soul-taking darts, which were inserted into the trees, were not poisonous. Even if they were not poisonous, Leylani did not dare to touch them, for fear of being wounded by their 360 degrees sharp blades. It was like a concealed weapon in the shape of a chrysanthemum with blade edges. She did not know martial arts. It would be great if she had such a snake bracelet to protect herself. At this moment, Lydia was afraid of attracting Elaine and the others. She suddenly grabbed Mira's hand and pointed it at herself. "Can you stop being crazy? If you want to deal with her, come at me. Why do you want to deal with Miss Leylani?" After being yelled at by Lydia, Mira regained some of her senses. She looked around and saw that she was in the manor of the mysterious and strict Prince Louis. A guilty look flashed in her eyes. "Please don't be angry, Lydia. I don't want to hit her, but her mouth is too vicious. I was so angry that I lost my head." After that, she waved her hand coldly and put away the snake bracelet. Seeing that she had put away the snake bracelet, Leylani jumped off the tree hurriedly. Yulia, who was sweating profusely, quickly stepped forward to support Leylani. Lydia glared at Mira coldly and ignored her. She went to help Leylani. "Miss Leylani, please don't be angry. Rosie had never suffered since she was a child. She has always been unruly and willful. I apologize to you on her behalf. I don't expect you to forgive her. I just hope that you can let her go this time. She made an unintentional mistake. I promise that she won't do it again in the future." After that, she glared at Mira. "Mira, what are you doing there? Come and apologize to Miss Leylani." Mira was not satisfied with Leylani, so she was naturally very unhappy. How could she apologize to her? It was obviously a quarrel between the two of them. Why was Mira the only one who had to apologize? Seeing that Lydia was carefully supporting Leylani, Mira was really upset, as if her good friend and sister were going to be taken away by Leylani. In an instant, a strong sense of jealousy spread from the bottom of her heart, like a poisonous snake. Rosie was right. Lydia cared more about Leylani and didn't care about her sister. Mira was jealous and furious at the moment. Leylani glanced at Mira coldly. She knew that Mira would not sincerely apologize to her. Even if Leylani forced Mira to apologize, the latter would not be convinced and would be dissatisfied and upset. What was the point? If it wasn't for the fact that Leylani had something important to do and couldn't stall for time, she wouldn't have spared Mira. Thinking of this, Leylani glanced at Lydia and narrowed her cold eyes. "I'm not a narrow-minded person, and I'm not that vengeful. Since she didn't hurt me, I can't be bothered to argue with her. However, I won't spare her the next time." Mira sneered in her heart. Would she let her off so easily? Leylani's tone was so arrogant, as if Lydia had let Mira offend her. You, Leylani, are just an abandoned girl. Do you think you are Prince Louis' concubine? How dare you speak in such a tone of teaching people a lesson, Mira thought. After saying that, Leylani glanced at Mira coldly. Although she said that she wouldn't care about it, it didn't mean that she didn't care about it in her heart. Lydia had already begged for mercy on Mira's behalf. If she continued to force her, it would only make things difficult for Lydia. Leylani would give others the impression that she would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Unfortunately, Leylani was a vengeful person in the bottom of her heart, so she had already prepared a little gift for Mira. A bottle of her latest developed fart powder mixed with pepper powder, garlic, and several kinds of Chinese medicine powder. However, there were no outsiders there. It was not the time to use the medicine yet. When they arrived at a place where there were many outsiders, Leylani would take it out. Lydia heaved a sigh of relief when she heard that Leylani didn't want to argue with Mira. Thank you for your forgiveness, Miss Leylani. Mira, Miss Leylani forgives you, but it doesn't mean you don't have to apologize. Come here and apologize to her. A strong sense of dissatisfaction appeared on Mira's face. She snorted softly and shook her head coldly. It seemed that she did not intend to apologize. Since Leylani was worried about Rosie, she didn't want to argue about this matter anymore, so she said, "You don't have to apologize. We are all people living under the same roof. Why do you apologize? But hey, since you're here, where is Rosie? Where is she?" After that, she winked at Yulia. Lydia said, "Didn't she say that she ate too much and wanted to take a walk to digest her food?" Yulia quickly understood Leylani's meaning. She glanced at everyone and suddenly said mysteriously, "Miss, I just saw Miss Lindsay sneaking into Prince Louis' bedchamber. She seemed to be very nervous, as if she was afraid of being discovered. I don't know what she's going to do there." "Why is she going to His Highness's resting palace?" As soon as Yulia finished speaking, Lydia frowned nervously. Even when she was frowning, she still looked extremely beautiful. "I don't know either. I only saw her take off her clothes when she walked to the door of the bedchamber. Maybe she went to see His Highness." Hearing that, everyone was shocked. Lydia's expression was very ugly. Even though she had always been decent, she could not remain calm when someone coveted her lover. At that moment, her entire body trembled and there was a fine cold sweat on her forehead. When Mira heard that, she snorted with disdain. This Rosie actually went to His Highness's room and took off her clothes. Could she be trying to seduce His Highness and steal the position of Prince Louis' consort? However, His Highness wouldn't like her even if she dresses up and offers herself to him. Let's go and see what's going on. After Lydia finished speaking, she took the lead to step forward. Whenever Lydia encountered something about Fabian, she would always forget to be reserved and calm. She would always become anxious. At this time, she couldn't wait to fly to the bedchamber and see what was going on. Seeing Lydia running so fast, Mira quickly caught up with her and said something that made her sister frightened. "Lydia, it's been so long, but Rosie hasn't come back yet. Has she succeeded?" In Fabian's bedroom. It was late. It was as dark as ink outside the window. Faint moonlight spilled in from the window, dyeing the bedchamber with a mysterious and majestic color. At this time, Fabian was sitting on the armchair with a cold expression, and a cold light flashed in his beautiful eyes. He looked coldly at the beauty in front of him. Rosie had lived a comfortable life since she was a child. She was beautiful and her skin was tender and smooth. At this time, she was kneeling reverently at Fabian's feet, trying her best to lean forward so as to showcase her breasts. Her voice was like an aureole, mellow, delicate, and gentle. "Your Highness, I didn't mean to offend you. I was really worried about your health and couldn't help but want to come and see you." Fabian stared at Rosie with disgust and said coldly, "Is this why you broke into my palace?" He didn't get rid of the poison until noon that day. After that, he felt a little tired and fell asleep. As a result, because he no longer had abdominal pain, he slept so comfortably that he even slept until the evening. He thought that it must be because Leylani helped him draw out the small pot of insects. Without the insects biting him, he was able to sleep so soundly. It had been a long time since he had slept like that. While he was thinking, he suddenly noticed a figure in light green sneaking in. At that time, he didn't lose his temper. When the woman came in, he made a sound which scared the woman so much that she immediately knelt on the ground and began to explain. When Rosie entered the bedchamber, she didn't see any candles on, so she thought there was no one inside. Unexpectedly, Fabian's cold and bloodthirsty voice came, which scared her so much that she knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Hearing Fabian's cold voice, Rosie's forehead was full of sweat. She didn't dare to look up at him, so she lowered her head and said carefully, "Please don't be angry, Your Highness. I didn't mean to break in. I really admired you since I was a child. I like you, so I dared to break in." After that, Rosie quickly put on a look of fear and weakness. She knew that all men loved beautiful women. As long as she pretended to be afraid of him, he would definitely forgive her. Sure enough, after she said that, Fabian just looked at her coldly and did not speak. Rosie wondered if her words worked. After all, every man in the world liked to be admired and worshipped by others. She just liked him and came to see him. She didn't commit any crimes, so she thought that he certainly wouldn't be angry. Seeing that Fabian was silent, Rosie became bolder. Suddenly, she revealed her body even more, trying to let Fabian see her body clearly. Her mother had said that the body was the best weapon for women. There were no men in the world who didn't have desires. Rosie took the initiative to come to him, and she thought that no man could bear such temptation. Thinking of this, Rosie lifted her chin boldly and stared at Fabian with her watery eyes full of affection. Her face showed a pitiful expression. Suddenly, her jade-like hands covered Fabian's shoes, and her heart raced. "Your Highness, I have always liked you. This night, the moonlight is so beautiful, and it's suitable for doing something romantic. Let me serve you, okay?" The moment his feet were touched, Fabian's fierce eyes suddenly became gloomy and horrible. He stared at Rosie coldly, and the disgust in his eyes intensified. Rosie didn't see the disgust in his eyes at all. She slowly put her hands on his feet and moved up his calves, and her expression changed from a delicate and pitiful look to a bold one. "Your Highness, don't worry. I will serve you very well. You can relax a little. I will make you very happy this night." Fabian's beautiful eyes suddenly widened, and his red lips seemed to be stained with blood. His gaze became cold and cruel. However, Rosie didn't realize it at all and was still immersed in her dream. "I admire you wholeheartedly. As long as you are willing to accept me, I can refuse any title and ask my father to assist you wholeheartedly." "Your Highness, are you listening to me?" As Rosie said that, she found that Fabian did not answer her at all. It was she who was talking to herself, so she could not help but be confused. Fabian ignored her and continued to frown. His body emanated a murderous intent. "Your Highness, why don't you pay attention to me? Is there anything wrong with me? Your Highness, what are you thinking about?" There was no response. At this time, Rosie's heart gradually sank. Right then, Fabian suddenly stood up and his tall figure covered Rosie's figure coldly. He said word by word, "I'm just thinking about how to throw you out so that I won't dirty my hands." "Your Highness." When Rosie heard that, she suddenly exclaimed. After that, she fell to the ground. At that moment, Leylani and Lydia had arrived at the door of the bedchamber. Lydia's face was full of worry, and she looked quite pitiful. She stood there like a fairy who was otherworldly, and she was nervous and worried as she looked inside. "There's no sound inside. Could it be that they're sleeping together?" Mira asked hesitantly, her eyes filled with jealousy. A man of high status like Fabian was the desired man of all women in the world, and she was no exception. If she could climb up and be with Prince Louis, she could fly up to a position of power and trample on these women in an instant. Mira also wanted to do that. Tears welled up in Lydia's eyes when she heard what Mira said. She stood there, and there seemed to be a layer of frost all over her body. Her long, black lashes were full of tears, and she felt so uncomfortable that her chest began to heave in pain. Seeing Lydia's reaction, Leylani instantly understood. She was jealous. It seemed that she was about to rush in to make trouble for Rosie. However, Lydia did not rush in. Although she felt uncomfortable, she just sniffed and turned to leave. At first glance, Leylani could tell that it was also a reaction of jealousy. As soon as Lydia turned around and left in anger, She would ignore her lover and wait for him to come back to her and give her an explanation. Just as Lydia turned around to leave, there was suddenly a scream from the bedchamber. "Your Highness, don't!" In the nick of time, a scream rang out and immediately resounded through the night sky. Everyone looked back and suddenly saw a figure in green being kicked out of the room. The figure flew into the sky like a rocket and flew over a wall. In an instant, the figure flew straight out, hit a big tree outside, and then fell to the ground with a plop. Hearing the continuous crashing sounds and the woman's painful screams, Leylani couldn't help but feel numb in her heart. How painful it must be. "What's going on? The woman who was kicked out seems to be Rosie?" Mira looked outside in confusion. She saw that the big tree leaning against the wall trembled. It shook a few times before it stopped, and yellow leaves fell down. Lydia was also shocked when she saw that scene. What did His Highness mean by that? He seemed to have kicked Rosie away. At that moment, Fabian had come out of his bedroom with a cold and arrogant expression. A chill appeared on his handsome face. Suddenly, he whistled slightly, and 10 secret guards flew out from all corners of the bedroom. They really flew out. When they heard the whistle, they flew down from the roof, from the high walls, from the trees, and other places. They landed steadily on the ground and saluted Fabian. "Your Highness, what can I do for you?" Seeing that orderly formation and hearing the cold voices, Leylani was shocked. She thought that there were no guards around Fabian when she saw the empty courtyard. Unexpectedly, when he whistled, 10 secret guards flew down to protect him. No wonder no one dared to break into Prince Louis's manor, as it was surrounded by his spies. If the killers did not figure out the situation and thought that there was no one there, they would not even know how they died. Judging from Fabian's fierce look, it was estimated that he only retained a few secret guards. If he wanted them, there would be more hidden guards. It seemed that Prince Louis was really a cunning old fox. Rosie must have been deceived by the quiet appearance of that courtyard. She broke in and ended up like this. When Fabian saw Leylani and the others coming in, he frowned slightly, and there was a flash of displeasure in his eyes. Then he ordered the secret guards, "Come on, take away the woman who trespassed and broke into my bedroom and soiled my room. Don't let her dirty the wall of my house." "Yes, Your Highness." After saying that, the secret guards were about to leave. After Fabian gave the order, he glanced at the women coldly and then asked in a deep voice, "What are you doing here? Do you want to break into my place with her?" No, we came here because we heard her scream. Your Highness, don't worry, we won't hurt you. Let's go right now." Thinking of Rosie's miserable ending, Leylani waved to Fabian with a smile and hurriedly ran out with the secret guards. She was going to watch the good show outside. Lydia saw that not only did Rosie not climb into Prince Louis's bed, but she was also mercilessly kicked away by him. Her nervous heart instantly relaxed, and the tears in her eyes disappeared. She looked at Fabian gently and said, "Your Highness, what happened to Miss Lindsay? Why are you? Was he also going to treat her like that?" "Didn't I say that she broke into my bedroom?" Fabian said coldly and ignored Lydia. He turned around like a ghost and walked back into his bedroom. Seeing that he had left so coldly, Lydia sniffed with some grievance. His Highness's attitude towards her was too bad. It was no different from a stranger. After all, she was the niece of Consort Roselle. Because of Consort Roselle, she often had meals with Fabian when he was in the capital, and they often had a chance to meet. Although Consort Roselle was always between them, Lydia always felt that he treated her differently from other women, because he did not reject her eating with them. However, looking at his attitude just now, her heart suddenly felt cold. It seemed that he didn't care about her at all. He had been looking at Leylani just now and did not even look Lydia in the eye. In his heart, Lydia was not even as good as the ordinary Leylani. Lydia was blaming herself, but Fabian really regretted saying a few more words to her just now. According to his usual character, he would usually be too lazy to explain anything to her. What he just said was just a warning to Lydia. He didn't want anyone to break into his palace like Rosie did. That was why he said the last sentence. Now that Fabian thought about it, why did he waste so much time on her? It was just wasting his breath. If she dared to break in, he could just ask the secret guards to drag her out. At this time, Leylani and Mira had already rushed to the gate of the prince's mansion. As soon as they ran out of the door, they saw Rosie lying on the grass beside the courtyard wall in pain, screaming for help. "Help! Help! My body hurts so much." Rosie felt dizzy and dazed from the fall. Her waist was sore and her back hurt, and her face and hands were covered with bruises. It was so painful. If it wasn't for the tree that broke her fall, she would have probably broken her bones. She felt as if all her internal organs had shifted. With a slight movement, she was in great pain. Seeing that the secret guards were about to drag Rosie, Leylani suddenly winked at them. The secret guards hesitated for a moment and didn't move for the time being. Leylani walked over to Rosie and held her hand. "Miss Lindsay, how are you? Are you hurt? Do you want me to take a look for you?" When Rosie saw that it was Leylani and that Mira and Lydia were following closely behind, her face immediately turned as red as an apple. Oh no, the scandalous thing she had done must be known by everyone. Right then, Rosie was too ashamed to show her face. If Rosie had known that Prince Louis was such a cold-blooded man, she would not have seduced him. At that moment, Rosie wished she could find a hole in the ground to hide in, or she could just beat herself to death. After saying that, before Rosie could answer, Leylani suddenly reached out and pinched Rosie's waist. The latter screamed in pain, as if she was a pig being slaughtered. "Leylani, why are you hurting me? Do you want to take this opportunity to get back at me for your personal revenge?" Rosie glared at her with her wide eyes. She glared at Leylani with resentment, wishing that she could swallow her alive. The corners of Leylani's lips curled into a cold smile. Rosie must not have been badly injured since she was able to roar so fiercely. Since Rosie wasn't seriously injured, Leylani felt that she should work harder. "I didn't pinch you. I was kind-hearted enough to offer my services to treat you. You fell so hard. If I didn't see it, you might be paralyzed." It could be seen at a glance that Rosie was lucky to have been blocked by the tree. When she fell down, the branches cushioned her fall, so she was not seriously injured, nor did she have any fractures. She just suffered some superficial injuries. However, how could Leylani let go of this opportunity to set Rosie up? As soon as Leylani finished speaking, she pinched the inner part of Rosie's arm again. That was the most painful part of a person that could be pinched. That pinch was so hard that Rosie burst into tears. However, after listening to Leylani's words, Rosie thought that she would be paralyzed. She was so scared that she did not dare to move and could only allow herself to be pinched by Leylani. "You, don't pinch me. You good for nothing, please take a look at me. Are there any wounds or serious injuries on my body? Will I be paralyzed? If you check on me, I will never bully you again." Rosie panicked. After all, Leylani was a doctor, and she was afraid that what Leylani said was true. However, she still did not realize that Leylani had changed a long time ago. Rosie still regarded Leylani as the fool she used to play with. Therefore, Rosie's attitude and voice were arrogant, and the word paralyzed made her very uncomfortable. "Yes, you will be paralyzed all over. Your bones will be broken, and your legs and hands will be broken. You are already a good-for-nothing," Leylani said coldly. She no longer played with Rosie, but stood up. "You are a good-for-nothing. Your whole family is good-for-nothing." When Leylani got up, she pretended to accidentally step over Rosie's body. When she stepped over her, her foot heavily landed and stepped on Rosie's snow-white fingers. Then she turned her foot as if she was crushing a biscuit. One's 10 fingers were linked to her heart. With such a fierce stomp from Leylani, Rosie screamed in pain. She shouted loudly, which immediately attracted a lot of passers-by to watch. "Leylani, how dare you step on me? Are you tired of living? Believe it or not, I'll kill you." While Rosie was shouting, there were already a lot of people who were nearby. Leylani glanced at Rosie with a sneer and said with a faint smile, "You can take off your clothes and try to seduce Prince Louis, but you were kicked out of the house by His Highness. Now, you can't even protect yourself, but you still want to kill me. Who gave you the courage?" As soon as Leylani finished speaking, the onlookers widened their eyes and were so shocked that their jaws dropped. Looking at Rosie again, a large portion of her fair chest was exposed. Her bra was obviously pulled lower, revealing half of her snow-white breasts. She looked extremely coquettish. After seeing all this, the onlookers began to discuss loudly. What? Miss Lindsay wanted to seduce His Highness Prince Louis Lee, but she was kicked out by His Highness and failed to seduce him. It looks like it's true. Even the 2 hostage princesses are here. With them, it shouldn't be false. However, Rosie is too bold to seduce Prince Louis. Everyone knows that His Highness has never been close to women and hates women touching him. Haha, it's so funny. I didn't expect that the unruly girl would be kicked away by Prince Louis. There will be another big news tomorrow. I'll tell my wife about this later. How shameless! How could a girl dress like that to seduce a man? The most ridiculous thing is that she failed to seduce a man and was kicked out by him. What a shame for us women. She's more than shameless. She's obviously a butch, isn't she? It's a compliment to say that she's shameless. Is this kind of person worthy of praise? People mocked and despised her, and everyone's words hit Rosie like stones. The corners of Leylani's lips curled into a cold smile, and she thought, Rosie, you've also gotten what you deserved this day. When Rosie joined hands with Nicole and the Crown Prince to destroy Leylani's innocence, she was also insulted like this. It's so nice. It's your turn soon. How do you feel being despised by everyone? She thought. When Lydia heard that everyone was insulting Rosie, this time she didn't speak up for her out of kindness. Instead, she said softly, Miss Lindsay, you like His Highness Prince Louis. Why didn't you tell us earlier? It's better to inform His Highness in advance rather than end up like this. Lydia was originally a very kind person in front of others, but when it came to Fabian, she would not be so kind. At the thought of Rosie trying to take off her clothes and seduce Fabian, Lydia trembled with anger. She didn't pity Rosie at all. Instead, Lydia wanted to rub salt on the latter's wound. Leylani looked up at the sky. Lydia was quite unique. She didn't look like a woman who only knew how to pretend to be kind. However, she seemed to care too much about Fabian, and her jealousy seemed to be a little too strong. Leylani also understood that Fabian was Lydia's lover. Despite this, the two of them hid it very well. When she was inside just now, she did not see Fabian looking at Lydia. This man did not like to show off in front of outsiders, but his woman would at least show off their love to everyone. Hearing Lydia's words, Rosie knew that Lydia was blaming her. She blushed and awkwardly explained, It's not like that. I didn't seduce His Highness Prince Louis. Don't listen to Leylani's nonsense. I just trespassed into His Highness' bedroom, and he asked me to come out. If you don't believe me, you can ask His Highness. Lydia rolled her eyes. Fabian had indeed said so just now. He had not said anything about Rosie seducing him. That matter was raised by Leylani. She and Rosie looked at Leylani at the same time. When Rosie saw the mastermind behind the rumor, she was so angry that she pointed at her and scolded, Leylani, why did you provoke the relationship between me and Lydia? I know that Lydia likes His Highness. How could I steal her lover? Don't talk nonsense. Before she could say anything, Lydia quickly stopped Rosie and said shyly and anxiously, Don't talk nonsense. I don't like His Highness. Keep your voice down. Don't get me involved if you get into trouble. Lydia was trying to distance herself from Rosie. Moreover, she was easily embarrassed and didn't like Rosie to spread the news that she liked Fabian. The crowd was confused by Rosie's explanation. Seeing that everyone was confused, Leylani rolled her eyes and quickly added fuel to the fire. His Highness is a good person. Of course, he would not humiliate you and didn't want to expose you in public. If you didn't seduce him, and you just accidentally trespassed into his bedroom, how did you end up at his bedside? If you really broke in by mistake, you would know that you were in His Highness's courtyard. You kept walking into his bedroom, so you either wanted to seduce His Highness or steal the treasures inside his room. What's more, look at your clothes. Where is your coat? Where did you take it off? Your collar is too low, isn't it? Even your chest is exposed. If you say that you didn't seduce His Highness, no one would believe you. After Leylani finished speaking slowly, the crowd became furious again, as if their man had been touched by Rosie. A few crazy girls angrily pointed at Rosie and scolded her. Bitch, how dare you seduce my Prince Louis? What kind of person is he? He's a noble person from the Jomai kingdom. He is like a deity. How could someone like you seduce him? Prince Louis belongs to us all. If you dare to covet him secretly, believe it or not, I'll smash you to death with rotten vegetables and eggs. Prince Louis is everyone's dream lover. No one can touch him privately. Rosie has gone too far. She even went to Prince Louis' room to harass him. What a shameless woman. Hearing the women's fierce confession to Fabian, Leylani was shocked. She thought that the ancient women would be very reserved, but she didn't expect that they were so unrestrained that they were not inferior to the modern fans of celebrities. They were the same as the fangirls who were obsessed with handsome men. No one could touch their favorite celebrities. Lydia and Mira's expressions didn't look very good, especially Mira. Rosie had said that she didn't like Prince Louis at all, but she went to His Highness behind their backs to seduce him. Now, she was kicked away by His Highness, which was really embarrassing. Seeing that everyone was scolding her, Rosie was so angry that she stretched out her fingers. At this time, she found that she could move. When she touched her body, none of her bones seemed to be broken and she was not paralyzed. It was only then that she realized that she had been deceived by Leylani. That damned Leylani. Rosie was now harmed by the rumors and ended up being criticized by everyone. It was all Leylani's fault. Rosie got up in a flash and pulled out the long whip from her waist, ready to deal with Leylani. At this time, the secret guards couldn't help but step forward to hold her down. The leading secret guard said coldly, "Come on, drag this woman who broke into His Highness's palace away." Immediately, 2 secret guards came to drag Rosie. She pulled the whip and wanted to resist, but it was hard for her to fight against 4 of them. How could she resist so many secret guards? "I don't want to go home. I want to see His Highness. You want to take me home, don't you? I won't go back. I will stay in Prince Louis' mansion." If Rosie was taken home like this, she would be too ashamed to meet her parents at home. She would be beaten to death by her father. Thinking that Leylani was the culprit, Rosie was so angry that she pointed at her and shouted with a murderous expression, "Dumb you, Leylani. It's all your fault. Just you wait. I will punish you in my own way. I will make you regret what you have done to me this day." Just as she was roaring wildly, a man suddenly came out of the gate of Prince Louis' mansion. Everyone saw that it was Howard, whose expression was full of displeasure. Howard came out with a sullen face and looked at Rosie coldly. "How dare you? How dare you make a fuss at the gate of Prince Louis' mansion? His Highness is very unhappy. He told you to drag her to the mass grave. She is not allowed to step into Prince Louis' mansion again. No, in the future, she is not allowed to get within 2 miles of Prince Louis' mansion. If she dares to approach it without permission, she will be punished." After Howard passed on Fabian's exact instructions, he let out a sigh of relief. His Highness didn't want to do this, but the noise outside was too loud and it made him uncomfortable. It was impossible for him to punish these onlookers, so he could only punish the culprit who caused the scene. Therefore, Rosie should go to the mass grave to be punished. As soon as she heard that she was going to be dragged to the mass grave, Leylani felt very relieved. The mass grave was located in a very remote deep mountain, where no living person could be seen during the day and night. There were a lot of dead people there, and Rosie would definitely be scared to death. Leylani suddenly found that Fabian had done a good thing and indirectly helped her. He didn't give her the reward for solving the poison. She originally wanted to ask him for some money, but now it seemed that she didn't want the money anymore. Rosie's punishment was her reward. Moreover, if Rosie dared to get within 2 miles of Prince Louis' mansion, she would be beaten up without exception. If Leylani wanted to make trouble for Rosie someday, she would merely have to trick Rosie into going to the entrance of Prince Louis' mansion and let the secret guards beat her. Hey. Leylani had never been in such a good mood. This time, Rosie was no longer arrogant, and she could no longer curse. As soon as she heard about the mass grave, Rosie screamed in horror. "No, I don't want to go to the mass grave. I beg you, send me home. I want to go home." Rosie's voice was so sharp that she sounded like a pig being slaughtered. Hearing it, Howard frowned unhappily and reprimanded her. "Don't shout. If you shout again, you will be beaten 200 times. 200 blows from the military staff were enough to beat Rosie into a pulp. When Rosie heard that, she was so scared that she didn't dare to scream again. At this time, her face was covered with cold sweat, and she was so scared that she almost wet herself. Her body was paralyzed with fear, and she had no strength to resist. She could only let the secret guards drag her like a piece of rotten cabbage. Rosie's heart was full of terror. Tears had gathered in her eyes, and she trembled with fear. When she thought that she would stay in the mass grave all night and stay with countless bodies and limbs, she was so scared that her hair stood on end and her heart beat violently. Soon, Rosie was dragged away, and the surroundings suddenly quietened down. After they returned to Prince Louis's mansion, the crowd slowly dispersed. Finally, there was no more noise outside Prince Louis's mansion. Mira was in a good mood when she returned to the subdivine attic. She shook the snake bracelet in her hand and snorted. "Lydia, I really didn't expect that Rosie was such a person. I thought she liked the crown prince, but I didn't expect that she liked Prince Louis and took the initiative to go to his bedroom. Unfortunately for her, Prince Louis doesn't want her." Lydia grabbed Mira's hand and said softly, "Don't mind her. She has been punished, and it's none of our business. Let's go back to our room and sleep." Leylani ignored them and went straight to the second floor with Yulia. She thought that Lydia would be like Nicole. No matter if she was right or wrong, she would pretend to beg for mercy. Unexpectedly, Lydia spoke neatly and decisively. Leylani really appreciated her. For people like Nicole, as long as there was a man she liked, in order to show off her kindness, she would be an unforgivable murderer. She would also grab her handkerchief and cover her mouth as tears fell from her eyes. She sobbed and said, "Oh, the murderer is too pitiful. Please spare his life. He has no choice but to kill. Look at how pitiful he is. You are too bad." Soon, Rosie was taken deep into the mountain outside the city by the secret guards. There was a low-lying basin in the deep mountain, which was a mass grave for the dead. The bodies of those murderers who had committed crimes, those who had suffered from the plague or unclaimed corpses, would be dragged to the mass grave and thrown there. Some kind-hearted people would dig a hole and bury them, put a piece of wood on it, and write a few words, which represented their graves.